Welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending our Board of Trustees meeting this evening. We'd like everyone to stand for our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So good evening, everyone. We just wanted to acknowledge the many people that we have in attendance this evening. We'd like to welcome some members of our community, particularly who are involved with our waterways. We have Town Trustee Ann Welker. I see her in the back. We have Captain Andy here tonight. We also have Steve Mahoney from Surf Riders. We have Peter Topping, our new baykeeper. And we have Irene Donahue, the Chief of Staff to Bridget Fleming.
And Dieter von Lesten, just noticed him.
Okay.
For Sustainability Committee.
That's right, so thank you as well. So we have a very exciting meeting tonight. I know some of our focus will be the environment. We have a number of great speakers here tonight. But before we move forward with that, I'd like to open it up to public comment. So anyone wishing to address the board, you may sign in the front table to be recognized. And we have a 3-minute limit per speaker. And then you could approach the podium, state your name and address. First up is Peter Topping.
So I also want to add that you don't need to, there's a computer there, you do not need to touch the microphone, just stand and face the board as you come up. Yep, thank you.
All right. First one. All right. Hi. Thanks for allowing us the opportunity to speak. My name is Peter Topping, the new Peconic Baykeeper as of January this year. I'm speaking both on behalf of Peconic Baykeeper, whose mission it is to protect and restore the drinkable, swimmable, and fishable waters of Long Island, but also as a lifelong Southampton town resident. Most specifically about the drain pipe going from Agawam Lake to the Bathing Corp Gin Lane Beach. It's my understanding that under Article 24, the Freshwater Wetlands Act, the New York State is typically the regulatory agency for all freshwater wetlands. The exception, pretty much only exception out here would be on Lake Agawam. So where that jurisdiction has been turned over to the Zoning Board of Appeals for Southampton Village. While we've had fish kills in Lake Agawam as early as 1954, since water has been tested for blue-green algae, namely the presence of microcystin, the toxin that they release, since 2003, these numbers have been climbing. And last year, Lake Agawam set a New York State record with levels 3,000 times the EPA threshold. During excessive rainfall events, as the lake fills, I realize this presents drainage issues for adjacent properties where basements begin to flood, and therefore there's the drainage pipe at the Bathing Corp. Peconic Baykeeper, in conjunction with Surf Riders Blue Water Task Force, does test the water near where the drainage area would be if it were open. We test it for Enterococcus bacteria, not microcystin, which would be indicative of the blue-green algae from Lake Agawam. However, these are done weekly. They're snapshots. Depending on the current, the tide, the wind, these are subject to change whether or not the pipe is open. So my questions for the village, which might be addressed tonight, I saw a lot of exciting things on the agenda. Just trying to learn more about the regulatory review process for allowing the discharge pipe to be opened, especially during the summer season when beach attendance is at a high, and also the bacteria levels are typically highest, both with blue-green algae and E. coli or Enterococcus. Are the waters of Lake Agawam tested for these health parameters before they're discharged? And are our bathers and recreational users being adequately informed? I know there's usually signage when that pipe is open. However, being a surfer and swimmer, we know these waters move down the beach. They don't always stay right where they're released. I think we can all agree that Lake Agawam's deterioration has been ongoing, and we recognize the village and residents' kind of efforts to improve that. That being said, solving one problem by creating another in adjacent waters is not something our organization is ready to walk away from. Thanks for your time, and we look forward to an ongoing dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And that's right. We don't want to solve one problem and then create another. So I believe this board is prepared to really dig into these issues, because this is an issue that we all care deeply about. So we are ready to take some action, and we've got some other things this evening that will help address that. So next is Nick Goodman. All right, Nick.
Hello, my name is Nikki Goodman, and I live on Lake Agawam at 89 South Main Street. I swim in the ocean every day, and I think that there should be a sign at the beach saying when the drain is open and when it is closed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Nick, I cannot tell you how happy I am to see somebody your age. How old are you, by the way?
I'm 10.
10. That's amazing. So, by the way, 8 years away from voting, so just we all aware of that. So thank you, Nick. Next is Stephen Mahoney.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm Stephen Mahoney. I'm chair of the Eastern Long Island Surfrider Foundation, and I want to talk about Surfrider's mission. Surfrider's mission is the protection and enjoyment of our ocean, waves, and beaches. We work to ensure public access to our beaches and protect clean water so it's safe to surf, swim, and generally enjoy the beach. The Eastern Long Island chapter has been working to protect the beaches and coastlines of the East End for 20 years. Nationally, there are 81 other Surfrider chapters that work on issues that are mostly important to protect clean water and healthy beaches locally. Through our Blue Water Task Force, which Peter spoke about, Surfrider volunteers are testing water quality at 50 sites from Montauk to East Quogue weekly in the summer. We test the ocean and bay beaches, creeks, coastal ponds, stormwater discharges for fecal indicator bacteria. Similar to seasonal beach testing that's performed by the county health department. We post all our data online and warn the public and alert officials when bacterial levels exceed the health standard. We also collect water samples from various lakes and ponds and bring the samples to Chris Goldbush Lab for blue-green algae counts and determination of algae blooms. All our data can be found online at go.surfrider.org/BWTF. Stormwater runoff and septic systems are the biggest contributors of pollution to our surface waters and beaches. We commend the village for bringing everyone to the table to find the best path forward for solving the water quality issues that have been plaguing Lake Agawam. Surfrider has been embracing a watershed approach whereby the use of bioswales and native plants can be used to soak up and filter the pollutant from stormwater. We have a very beautiful and successful ocean-friendly garden bioswale in East Hampton Village Green that is absorbing road runoff before it can impair downstream waters in Town Pond, Hook Pond, and ultimately Main Beach. We really look forward to working on a similar solution to Lake Agawam that can improve water quality and be a real source of beauty and pride for the downtown village area. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Megan Nadashi.
Hi. Thank you so much for your time tonight and for listening to all of us. My name is Megan Nadashi Magyar. I live at 116 Boyson Road, and I'm a lifelong Southampton resident. And I'm here tonight because I'm very concerned about the Lake Agawam drain pipe that opens into Gin Lane Beach. My understanding was historically that was mainly opened in the winter and when the tidal conditions were met, and now it has a couple times been open this summer, near times when a lot of us are swimming and playing on the surf and sand. So I know that the cleanup of Lake Agawam, I'm wholeheartedly behind that and will do everything in my power to rally community members to get behind it. But for this summer, my great hope would be, if the drain's open, that there be bigger signs, more public notice, because the signage that is there right now was not enough to deter a lot of us 2 weeks ago when we were all swimming and apparently it had just been closed. So a bigger sign, more transparency about when it's open and the decision-making process that goes into opening it. So maybe a Lake Agawam Drainage Committee where there's more than one person opining on the opening and closing of the drain. That would also be great. And the third was, I have heard that the drain may or may not be partly broken, just that it could be thoroughly examined and if it is broken, to be fixed. I sent out an email about this issue yesterday. The response has been resounding. Most people who swim there don't know about this drain pipe. So I think public awareness it's rising, and we all just want more light shed on the safety of the swimming water at that very popular destination. Because we know Lake Agawam is dangerous. We don't know what's happening to that stuff when it hits the ocean, but it could be really bad. And if that's the case, this community needs to not be swimming there, is my personal feeling. But anyway, thank you so much for your time. And
Thank you.
Megan, thank you. One easy thing that we can do is, at a minimum, post on our website as to when the drain will be open, in addition to our Facebook page, which we're starting, as well as even posting on Twitter, just so we have as much information and transparency out there as possible. Very easy to do, doesn't take a whole lot of work, so that's something just immediately we can do among many other solutions. By the way, to the video team in the back, I did send a video. I don't know if we have that, but at some point I'd like to show the audience who are not familiar with the drainage situation. You could put up whenever it's easy, but I have a video footage of what this drainage looks like. And for those who are not familiar, I'd like everyone to see it, just to enlighten everybody for those who are not familiar. So next we have Peter.
Go ahead. We're going to try to put the video up first.
Okay, great.
He's got it up there. That's what the laptop's for. No.
Thank you for bearing with us. We can, if we need to do one more public comment, we can maybe do that. If not, we'll have this video. So this is the drainage pipe right here. This is in May, end of May. But this is what it looks like. And this is the toxic water going into our waterways, going into our beaches. So everyone is absolutely right to be concerned about this. That's just the entire, this is the lake emptying out. Again, we're aware of this, but this also, this is to highlight exactly what's going on. And we will do what we need to do in order to fix this situation. Transparency is a good start, but obviously the health of our lake is the ultimate solution here. And we do want to give Gary Gillespie, our supervisor of the highway department, a lot of credit for helping get some drainage in place so that we don't have to do this in the future. So we've had a really good step there. So with that said, now that we've highlighted that, we can move forward with another public comment. We've got Peter Magyar, if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Thank you for your time. Hi, my name is Peter Magyar, and I live at 116 Boyson Road. It is dangerous enough that we have one of the most toxic lakes in the state here in Southampton, and we are draining it into the ocean next to Gin Lane Beach, where I swim and surf every day. For swimmers' safety, it is critical they know when Lake Agawam is being drained so they can take their own risks. I'd like everybody who's concerned about the drain pipe to please stand up.
Yes, we have.
Yeah, I'm standing there, too.
Thank you.
All right, Peter, thank you. That was good job. Next is Fernanda Niven.
Oh, I don't think she's here yet. She isn't here yet.
Okay.
She's coming from work.
No problem. Pat Natashie's next.
Good evening. My name is Pat Nadashi. I've lived in the town for almost 50 years, the village for 30. I too live at 116 Boyson Road. We felt that we should have every generation present. I do not surf, I do swim. I was not as familiar as everyone else with the drain pipe issue, even though I have swum on that beach for longer than I care to admit. I just have one point that I think was news to me and might be of news to you. There is a roadmap.
Please address the board. Please address the board. Thank you.
I'm used to.
Yes.
There is a roadmap, which I learned of from the former mayor, and I don't know how much that plays into the opening of the pipe. But apparently, when the tide is going out and the wind is offshore and the sea is turbulent, it is much safer to open the pipe. And I think in addition to the signage, it would be great if we felt that those points on the road were being observed. I would like to thank you for your attention, for bringing so many of us together today for this really critical issue, and I think you can see how important it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Pat, thank you, and I would love for everyone to stay because we have 3 great board presentations coming up, all environmentally and water focused. Again, just to reiterate, we have Edwina Van Gaal from the Perfect Earth Project, and she's going to inform us about the correct fertilizers we should be using and give us some guidance about banning or not using herbicides and pesticides. So this is going to be an amazing presentation. I want to thank Trustee Allen for helping arrange it, and we also have a presentation for the Lake Agawam buoys, so that will be able to give us some more scientific detail on that. And then thirdly, we asked Charlie McGuckin from Rue Environmental. He's an environmental engineer, and he's going to talk to us about some solutions, some big picture solutions to the problem. So he's here. So we'll keep the public comment going, but I hope everyone could stay for these presentations because I believe they'll be quite informative. Next is Tom Louthan. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom Louthan from 45 Hunting Street, Southampton. I'm a Southampton voter and an ocean swimmer, like many of you here today. I'm hopeful. Last year they opened the drain pipe after Labor Day, and as we just saw in the video, you don't want to have your children going to surf school when that's happening. Again, I'm hoping that this year it's going to be different. And here's the reason. Much has been done to improve Lake Agawam. We've seen the installation of so many catch basins around the village. This is just a great thing. Rain gardens as well. And just earlier this month, the Suffolk County approved from the Gin Lane drainage. There's an award to improve the drainage at Gin Lane. This is the south end of Lake Agawam. This is really a great thing because it'll put in 13 drainage systems down where we need it the most. Is there any way that you could speed up that process of getting that award going? Because I think once you install that drainage, what we'll see is maybe you won't have to open the drain pipe because it should be low enough. Anyway, I'm hoping that's the case. There is much more to do, and it's a challenge. I think what we really need is a comprehensive management plan. We need to identify what are the priorities right now for the next 5 years. What are we looking at going forward in terms of costs? How do we pay for them? And most important, I think we need to establish a timeline. So this is important for the community. I think this way we're going to have a roadmap where the community can see this is how we're going to restore Lake Agawam. So importantly, as we turn around and look at the painting of Lake Agawam behind you, I think this represents, it won't be just a memory from better days. It's going to be the new reality. So let's hope that our good work will allow us to get Lake Agawam back on track. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. We now have William Hyman.
It's already been covered.
Okay, great. And Sharon Stern.
Hi.
Thank you, Sharon.
So I wanted to raise one other issue in addition to Lake Agawam.
Yep. Please state your name and
Sorry, I'm
address.
Sharon Stern at 135 Cooper's Farm Road.
Okay.
And I wanted to state one other issue in addition to Lake Agawam, which is the overall water treatment facilities in the village. And like the gentleman from Hunting Street, I'm very curious what the plan is, the timeline, the locations, the cost, the general package of what is going to be addressed in addition to the lake itself. And that's a minor issue, but there's a whole other slew of water treatment issues in the village. That's what I'm concerned about. So I'd love to hear what's coming, because that's the other side of the coin here.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Sharon. And lastly on our list here, we have Josh Bellery. Larry. Josh, nice to see you.
Hi, my name is Josh Bellery. I live on Hillcrest Avenue here in Southampton. I wanted to talk about some of the things we did to remediate North Sea Harbor. We created, about 9 years ago, wasn't it, Mark? About 9 years ago, we created something called the Conscience Point Shellfish Hatchery. And we tested for about 5 years. It was a STEM program. So we tested the water samples, five different locations, twice a day for about 5 years. We used college students and high school students to do that testing. And we looked at a lot of different parameters. One of the things we looked at was how are we going to do low cost, because obviously the hatchery cost about $500,000 per se, but it didn't cost the taxpayers anything. It was all done by private donation. We could do the same thing here. And to remediate North Sea Harbor, we used road endings as our main focus. Road endings, we found, were putting a lot of different pollutants into the water, not just from yard, but from many, many areas. So very low cost were road endings. And as I drove over to the Southampton Village Ocean Rescue Program, I noticed today that we don't have those road endings along that lake, something that would be very easy for us to do. The other thing that, I got some notes here.
What is a road ending?
I'm sorry. If I want to look at you, but I know I need to look at you.
We're
Okay.
confused.
Okay, sure. So anytime you have a road that goes down near the lake, and let's say you're going along where we created the Agawam Ferry, just past that, there's a road that comes down. So a very inexpensive way to change where that road, where all the water comes down, is to dig out that area, fill it with rock, and then backfill it with sand. So when the water comes down that road, it goes into that little cobalt. It changed the sediment in North Sea Harbor dramatically. Just those little road endings, and I know Ann is back there, and I'm supposed to be facing you guys, but we got the Board of Trustees to help us do it. And the Board of Trustees, as you know, really is the people that do a lot of that kind of stuff around the lake, because they sort of own the lake per se. And we're working with them, and of course, I'm not going to talk about CPF fines. Being a village resident, we have a lot of money, I think, and this is low cost. So does that answer your question about what road endings were?
Thank you.
So, but there's many other things we found. We found that a lot of our drains were clogged, and getting clogged on a regular basis. So what we had a lot of volunteers do was just give us report on your drain at your road, and then we reported that to the highway department. The highway department was then on it. A lot of it is information that citizens in this particular group can do that live at the lake or playing around the lake. So there's those opportunities. when Mark, you and I and Mike Irving back there was a big part of creating the Agawam Ferry. And when we created the Agawam Ferry, we manned it for 3 years. It was awesome. It was really, really great. I know there's been some questions about the most polluted lake in the state of New York. Folks, I think it's a great crisis. If this body and this body back here, if we can make that lake better, if we can go out and test those waters with an electric boat, say, like we did in North Sea Harbor, and those were all volunteers. Those were volunteer high school and college
You're at
kids.
3 minutes.
I'm sorry.
Just try to
Okay,
tie it
if
together.
we could do the same thing to this place. We could go out in an electric boat. We could have high school students and college students learn how to use the microscopes. The microscopes now are in our schooner in Sag Harbor, our 50-foot schooner. We'll be out tomorrow doing the exact same thing, testing our waters with those microscopes and those water analysis equipment. We could be doing the same thing in Lake Agawam. You have a great opportunity here. So thank you.
Thank you.
I don't want to take up too much of your time.
You're too late to sign up, can I?
Feel free. Anyone who else is who is interested in public comment, feel free to come up, state your name and address.
My name is Tony Piazza. I'm a village resident at 27 Henry Street, and I was part of the design team that built the bioswale in East Hampton Village, which, by the way, was a public-private partnership project where the community, the municipality, and some of the community committees came together with private and public funds and put that project together very successfully from a PR standpoint as well as an actual functional standpoint. So as a village resident, I'd like to do more of that work here. So I fully support your efforts. And just think that with the turnout we have here today, it should be really easy to get this partnership together and work on water quality issues in my home village. Thanks.
Very good. I can't tell you how excited I am to see everyone here. And by the way, I'd love for you to reach out to us as well, to the Board of Trustees, to Russell, our village administrator, because this is exactly the type of project we'd love to see happen and have it happen.
So let me
quickly.
just explain. I reached out to Edwina a year ago for our career fair, and Edwina couldn't make it, so she recommended Tony, who came and was a panelist here last December. He did a great job. All the kids who attended said, "Oh, I want to be you because you go to Martinique, and then you're here in the summer, and then you go to Paris."
No one wanted to be me.
He had just flown in. Right, nobody wanted to be Russell. He was on the panel. And Tony, you've already added a lot to our community moving back here, and we're really happy to have you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Trustee Allen. Is there anyone else who'd like to make public comment?
My name is Susan Stevenson. I'm a village resident. In listening to the commentary tonight, I think one of the real issues right now is who decides when you open up the pipe and why. And I think, at least if there is an issue, at least for the summer, and it did rain 2 inches today, that people really want to know right now how you're going to control that until you get a larger plan. That seeing that guy come out with the bulldozer at 5 o'clock, which I've seen repeatedly, is unsettling. And maybe it's fine and maybe it isn't, but I think the public has a right to know how you determine when you do that and what is the effect, and is there, is anyone monitoring this, and also the public awareness of it. I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. I'd also love to see a set of standards as well. I don't know, Gary, if you're interested in speaking now. Sorry to put you on the spot, or we can move on, but I'd love to introduce everyone to Gary Gillespie, and he can maybe provide a little bit of insight onto the process and maybe even what we can do to address the situation.
Briefly on it. The decision on the lake, basically, I get together with staff from the highway department. We constantly watch the lake levels, and we watch levels in basements of village buildings to see where water levels are. We have pumps that if an emergency comes along and we start to flood out in the basement, then we know something's going on with the lake. We'll go down and check the lake levels, and we'll determine if we have to lower the lake or not. Basically, we try to keep all the drain openings to the winter or to the off seasons. Occasionally, when the groundwater gets too high, or we get too many rainstorms like today, where we get an inch or two in about 15, 20 minutes, all that water bypasses all these drains we put in, and we added 2 inches to the surface water today. So in the summertime, we've kind of worked with the Bath and Tennis and previous mayors in saying that we would only drain in the summertime at night. So what we do is we come in around 6 p.m. at night once the bathing corp closes. We have a backhoe goes in, opens up, we let it run during the night. We guarantee that it's closed by 8 o'clock the next morning. Usually it's 7:30. And that way it's not a danger to the swimmers. I do want to, full disclosure, say this year we had 2 instances where the drain leaked and we had a trickle coming out, a stream coming out in the morning. We were called by Don King, who's a good partner for us down there because he has eyes. And so we went down there and we had to close the sand on it because the gate valve wasn't shut all the way. We did have one other day where an employee missed an assignment, and we found it was open till 9:30. Don King also called us on that day. We got right down there. We shut it down, and now a supervisor knows that he'll be there every time that thing is open to make sure it's shut the next day and not leave it to a lesser employee. So that's how we kind of handle it during the summer. We try to get the lake as low as possible in the off-season, so when the spring rains, the summer rains come, our hope is that we never open it at all during the summer, because we just don't want to do it. If the spring rains come, like this year, it was a pretty heavy rain from like April and May, we added about 8 inches of water to that lake, so we had to get rid of some of that water. We start getting calls from businesses in the business district that their cesspools are filling up. They have them pumped out, and they immediately fill right back up with groundwater. That's the first thing we see. After that, we see in village buildings, as I mentioned, that water levels are rising in those basements. And if we don't do something at that point, the next thing is the homes around the lakes, their basements will start to flood. When those things start to flood, we're past the point of no return. If we don't run the water then, we will have high water in the ground for about 2 months. And about 10 years ago, it did happen where a mayor said, we're not opening that lake, I don't care. And we didn't open the lake, and we got caught with our pants down. And for 2 months, people were pumping water into the street. And fortunately, we never had to do that again. So when we see these outliers coming in that we know that something's about to happen, that's when we have to do the lake. And that's the only time we'll open it in the summer in the evening.
Can those cesspools, can they fill to a point where it becomes a public health issue as well in the village and so forth? Because, these public bathrooms or bathrooms in general can't flush properly?
It's certainly possible. What we found just is from the wet use places that have a lot of flushes going on, they're filling up the fastest, and I think what they're basically saying is the bottom third of their cesspools are full of groundwater, so they get less capacity. They're not overflowing from the groundwater, okay, but the bottoms of them are filling up.
Thank you, Gary.
Gary, thank you very much for that clarity.
Is there any additional public comment?
Did you want to say anything? You were looking as though, no. Okay.
Well, I think we've clearly articulated this evening that we have a clear and obvious problem that we need to immediately work on, and that's exactly what we will be doing. There is a piece of good news that I'd like to discuss. We've been working with the private sector as well as homeowners who live by the lake, and if anyone else wants to join, in forming a new 501c3, the Lake Agawam Conservancy. This will be a group of anyone, concerned citizens, etc. And our goal is to use this organization through a public-private partnership in order to address everything related to the lake, whether it's drainage, whether it's nitrogen loading, whether it's runoff, buffers, new technologies such as permeable reactive barriers. All of these things we'd like to do, obviously, with the village, with the 501c3 that we're forming together as a community. So these are all things that we'd like to address. So I just wanted to share the good news. We hope to raise some money, a good amount, through this new organization, and work with our community, with our grant writers, and with everybody in order to take the first steps, or continue to take the steps, actually, to solve this issue. So with that said,
if I could just add one other thing, I'll work with Gary, and I want folks maybe to you can email me at villageadmin@southamptonvillage.org with ideas of where better signage could be. We could certainly work on a little better way of getting the word out. Again, we'll definitely post it on our website if we have a schedule of when it's open or closed. But also we're going to make sure that we get people know when it was open, when it was closed, and that we can take that immediate action as well. We have a sign shop that can do a sign, so we'll get right on that.
And Russell's email is just rcratterville@southamptonvillage.org, so we'll take the emails. And thank you, Russell. So with that said, we are very excited for our board presentations. The first presentation will be Edwina Von Gaal from the Perfect Earth Project. Thank you, Edwina.
Has the public comment period ended? Can I?
No. He asked if there was anyone else. Did you?
Okay, I just arrived. Can I speak?
Oh, all right.
Maybe we could do a second public comment. Would that be okay?
I just have something quick to say, if I could just be added. Are you in the middle of a public hearing? Because it's not about whatever the topic is.
No, it's not the public hearing yet. It's a presentation.
Okay, so is it possible to get...
There is an opportunity for second public comment.
Okay.
While we're doing this, I can just get started because there's a lot going on here tonight. So, yeah, I'm Edwina Von Gaal. I'm from the Perfect Earth Project, and we are a nonprofit that I started a number of years ago. I live actually on Accabonac Harbor, and have for years, and it's, of course, a tremendous inspiration to me. I'm a landscape designer. And I decided because this is all such a huge inspiration to me, this is the kind of thing that I would just love every landscape I did to look this good. So, but unfortunately there was a little trouble on the horizon. This is Georgia Pond, where a dog died from the toxic blue-green algae there, and this is probably all familiar to you. And this was years ago. I started this in 2008. I decided that my own profession probably was playing a role, and I needed to know more about it and what we could do. And so what I learned was actually we're playing a rather large role, and I asked all of my clients to help me to explore, did you know what's going on your lawn, what's the effect on the watershed, what's the effect on your health? So we took a few years to explore that. We found out these chemicals are really bad for children and pets. They cause autism, asthma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and endocrine disruption, a host of horrible things. They're really bad for pets. And so I started the Perfect Earth Project to raise consciousness about the dangers of the chemicals, about what they're doing to not only our health, but also our water bodies and our environment, and to inform people how to get great results without them. So we educate. So what's the first thing to do? Make a commitment. Everyone should make a commitment to go without chemicals. There is, in non-agricultural landscapes, there is absolutely no reason to use them. Your landscapes are healthier, and so are you without them. It's just a question of a process, not a product. And so why are we doing all of this? For this. We're endangering our children, pets, ourselves for dandelions. And one of the reasons is that my profession, my peeps, have all been trained in a process that started a long time ago, after the Second World War, that was based on miracle products. They were also war surplus, so they were cheap, and they were a great marketing opportunity for everybody to live in this sort of military precision that made everyone comfortable. It's what saved us, and it was the way forward. Nobody thought there was anything wrong with it. It looked real good. It was easy. Just pour the stuff on. And a landscape industry evolved that is all about killing and clipping and nothing about promoting life. This is a classic example. There's nothing there to grow something. And we've kind of forgotten about this.
I remember that.
It's actually for killing that last batch. If you really can't stand those last few dandelions, this is a much more easy and effective way to do it. But we've had these chemicals little by little. We started to realize they're really not good for us. Nobody understood why, really. And as more and more sophisticated chemicals replace things like DDT, people became more convinced they couldn't hurt us because they're more targeted. They only kill this and they only kill that. We now know why, because we understand we have a gut biome. And your gut biome rules your body. It rules your endocrine system, your immune system, and even your cognitive functions. And that system is composed of all the things that pesticides kill. And without it, you cannot operate. And this is the cutting edge this has come about since I started this project. So it's been a really interesting and amazing journey for me to learn what the basis is. Because I used to say, well, just why take a chance if it could be bad for you? Now we know what exactly the mechanism is. So how many people who you know are eating really well, but they are walking across a totally toxic lawn to get to their patch of organic kale? And this is the next frontier. And so how sad it is that mural behind you is now the enemy. That is a giant cesspool. And it's the symbol of Southampton. And there is absolutely, so we can all complain about opening the pipe, but that's not enough. Why should we care? Why is what's coming out of the pipe such a problem? And that's really the problem. And actually, every one of us can do something about it by cleaning up what we're putting on our lawns. It is an easy action that everyone can take. And I'll zip through this because, so there's the thing, what is this magic solution? Water properly, mow properly, have smaller lawns if you can, just have what you need. How about an area rug, not wall to wall? How about you can go lawnless? Not if you have lots of kids. I mean, I'm practical about this. I'm not anti-lawn. Just want clean, safe lawns. But I do really like native plants. Native plants, buffer zones, native plantings, they bring back, because once you get involved, you it snowballs. Because Southampton could become an example, not just of lawns that are chemical-free, but properties that serve nature. Because that is our next big challenge, the loss of biodiversity. Maintaining the soil. There's a lot of news out there about soil. Another amazing frontier in the learning experience. Don't blow your leaves off your soil. That is no way to spend your winter exposed to the sun. This new look of the toilet plunger look around trees, the worst thing you can do for a tree. Or the bare spot, like mulching everywhere. That should be plants, not mulch. That's what will hold the soil. That's what prevents runoff into your water bodies. Fill it with plants. It's easy. And don't throw away your biomass. Biomass is everything your property produces. That's food it made for itself. You don't need to feed your property if your property is allowed to feed itself. That's what happens in the woods. It can happen right at home. Keep your grass clippings on the property. If you mow right after you irrigated, you're going to have big slimy clumps of junk, or all around your lawn. Coordinate your mowing and your irrigating. Leave the grass clippings, leave your leaves, mow them, leave them. They are food, free. And get to love clover. Clover has a bad rap, which was intentional, because after the war, when they introduced the broadleaf killers, used to be clover was included in every lawn mix. broadleaf killers killed lawn. Oh, well, we can sell more fertilizers because clover is a nitrogen fixer and provides 50 to 60% of your lawn's fertilization needs. Clover means you don't have to put fertilizer on your lawn. And embrace diversity. If you get to know your bugs, would you kill this bug on site? It is kind of scary looking, right? But you know what it actually is? It is the larval form of a ladybug. And actually in the larval form, that's like they're teenagers and they're voracious. And so that's when they really do their major eating. And if you kill an aphid the moment you see it, what are your ladybugs actually going to have to eat? So you need to have some tolerance for what's happening in the landscape. Allow some caterpillar damage on your leaves. If you buy only plants that nothing eats, what is anything going to eat? So what will your birds eat? What will they feed their young? If you spray stuff the moment a bug appears, then you have an absolute food desert and the entire system starts to go down, and that is what is happening. So let nature make some decisions on your property. This is my own front yard. It used to be lawn. This is my driveway. I don't spray it with Roundup, clearly. And so, this isn't everybody's look, but you might start letting go a little bit and start thinking about how nice it could be if your landscape didn't require constant control. What if you looked out and you saw it just having some fun out there? Talk to your landscapers. That's what Perfect Earth does. We try to help landscapers as much as possible. We have Paul Wagner, our expert, is at Bridge Gardens, which is the Peconic Land Trust facility in Bridgehampton, every Tuesday afternoon at 3 o'clock for free, giving out advice. He's incredibly knowledgeable. We'd like to see these disappear. This is the smoker of the past, right? These should not be anywhere. And this is what we do want to see along our waterfronts. A buffer zone. You can have your lawn, but you really need a buffer zone at the edge. Just let it go. So I put in a few buffer zone samples. So I do have some literature here for you, for the public. If anybody would like to sign up, we put out a tip every week. We have a book that tells you how to do it. You can sign up for our tips. And one of the things we do, so this I brought for you guys if you want it, we do a consulting program, but actually it's sort of not very official. We sort of started it out as official, but now it's much more on a kind of person-by-person basis. But what we ask is people to think about talking to your landscaper about what is going on your lawn is the first place to begin. Find out what is happening. New York State requires by law that your landscape contractor give you a list of every single, and a label actually rarely gets done, of every single chemical that they plan to put on your property for the coming year when you sign up for them. If anybody who puts chemicals on your property is being paid to put chemicals on a property, and they do not have a pesticide license, and they have not put out the yellow flags and have not warned a neighbor, they are breaking the law. And lots of people are going door to door and selling tick sprays now. That is not legal. That is, and they are not harmless. And the organic ones do kill bees and butterflies. And so there's so much misinformation, and all of that when it rains. Not just the properties around Lake Agawam, but all the properties in the Lake Agawam watershed, and there are well over 1,000. So that's everybody. And so it's not just the people on, don't just point fingers at the people on the lake. Of course, they might be contributing a slight fair share more, but we can all play a role. We can all do something really important. So what I would like to ask of you is to lead by example, make a commitment on the part of the village to ban the use of pesticides. And pesticide, the word pesticide includes herbicides, insecticides, rodenticides, every side. So try to make a commitment to go without them on all your properties. You cannot extend this ban beyond properties that you own, because that's a New York State law. But everyone can make that commitment to their own property. You've been living together, you're going to get married, and you're not going to cheat. that's what it is. And I would also like you to follow the example of other communities we work with. And when you can mandate what people are planting on their properties, I know there's some things over which you have jurisdiction, 50% of the plants should be native plants. And on all of your ornamental town plantings, same thing, 50 to 100% native plants. And Surfrider's here to help you. Thank you very much.
May we ask a couple questions?
Of course.
First of all, thank you. I know how busy you are and how hard it was to schedule you, and
really?
we're thrilled to have had you
Where I
here.
live, come on.
So I heard through the grapevine that you met with Chris Gobler today.
I did.
I don't know if he addressed with you or if you discussed his nitrogen loading study that he conducted a couple years back.
A little bit. He also mentioned that he has actually been working on Lake Agawam longer than anyone sitting in these chairs. And he said, so he's kind of the ongoing repository for the Lake Agawam water quality, historic memory bank. So he's happy to be helping you and that he can do that for you. And I know he has a representative here tonight, so they could probably answer those questions better than I.
The reason why I asked you is in his last presentation to us, which was a little less than 2 years ago, he had indicated that 8% of the Lake Agawam contamination comes from lawn fertilizers and
That's a lot.
pesticides, and that's actually a pretty big number.
Yeah.
And to your point, we should all point fingers at ourselves because I know I'm not a good person and I need to be a better person on my lawn. So the other
An
question.
easy way to get good, get a halo. Yeah.
And the other question I had, and we had talked about this before, I don't think people realize we can't legislate pesticides. Is that correct?
That is correct, that no municipality can make a law governing the use of pesticides that is more stringent than the state law. This is directly related to pesticide lobbying, and it is in place in 30 some odd states in the United States.
And but there is a notification law that's required by the DEC, is there not?
Yes, there is.
Okay, so when people are spraying contaminants throughout the village, what is their obligation to their neighbors that they're doing this?
They're supposed to put out the yellow sign in advance of the spray. I think it's 24 hours in advance of the spray, so that the neighbors are made aware of the fact that there will be spraying happening in their vicinity.
And you as a neighbor then have every right to walk over to that resident and ask what is being applied to the lawn?
Yes, and you could ask the person who's doing the spraying. It often doesn't really go down well, though. So we do have suggestions about that, how to talk to your neighbors, because it's a frequently asked question.
I don't know if anyone from the audience has questions for you, but you enlightened me so much when we met, and I think this is, if we can do something, we can't put a sewage treatment system in, as somebody mentioned earlier, in the next year, but we can certainly do something about this.
And I hope I get to come back maybe in another year and tell you the exciting thing that Chris and I are working on in terms of plant-based septic management. Yeah.
Well, we actually might have something tonight about that as well. So, as our third presentation. So,
Because doesn't it make sense if your sewage system, instead of throwing away nitrogen in water and then replacing your water with coming straight out of the aquifer to water your lawn and buying fertilizers to water your lawn, what if we just kind of made a little connection there?
in fact, I don't want to wait a whole year. I'd like to do that today. So,
well, if you have a location, let us know.
Okay.
Okay.
We do.
We'd be delighted. All right. Anything else? Or you can see me after or call me anytime.
No, you have to come up front, please. Yep, thank you.
Hi, my name is Fernanda Niven. I've been a resident. I was 6 years old, 73 now. My question to you is, no, I don't use any fertilizer on my lawn. I haven't for years. My concern is the ticks. To be told that I couldn't spray for ticks would be extremely upsetting to me. And I'm wondering if you know of something that works for ticks, other than obviously the very serious chemicals that are being used?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, the Carey Institute is doing the primary research on ticks and tick-borne diseases in the United States right now. They have, their research so far shows that tick spraying knocks back tick populations by 60-some-odd%. It reduces the incidence of tick-borne diseases by 0. Not one bit. You are the tick's target, so spraying your property is missing the target. You should be spraying you, and you need to be checking you. But spraying a property is not necessarily effective. Now, they're in the middle of a 5-year study to see whether other methods than the one that was tested for the last study might have a larger effect on the incidence of tick-borne disease, and hopefully a lesser effect on unintended consequences in the landscape, because right now we are all very concerned about the loss of biodiversity and the loss of insects. Do you know how hard it is to kill a tick, right? You pulled one off, you cannot kill it.
Right.
And it's real easy to kill a butterfly. And so tick sprays are taking a really terrible toll on our pollinators and our valuable insect population. And it's really hard for us, but also the Southampton Hospital Tick-Borne Disease Center, they feel that spraying gives people a false sense of security, and that they stop checking themselves and they stop spraying themselves, and they feel that that could be one of the reasons that it actually is not effective to spray your property.
Just to be clear, so you said it does kill 67% of the ticks?
Well, it depends on how frequently. I mean, that was in their study. So they used a certain kind of pesticide, sprayed at a certain interval, sprayed in a certain way, and that was their result. So I can't say that that's what's happening on your property.
Right. No, but that is quite a large number of death. If you have 67% out of 100% is a large kill-off.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you,
Yes,
Fernanda.
Tony.
What can you spray yourself with?
Well, I'll just
I
quickly
could
do this
also-
because I know everybody's in a hurry. He asked what you can spray yourself with. I do actually feel that in the end, if you're hiking, I don't want people to stay indoors, it's just terrible. Hikers use clothing that they purchase that's permeated with permethrin, or you can buy permethrin spray and permeate your clothing. It will last for quite a few washes. Is it the perfect response? No, we need to get, just like we have to clean up Lake Agawam in order to, that's the real thing is go back to the root cause. We need to find out why the ticks are so popular, why this is happening. But until then, that's a way to protect yourself. You can also make, there are lots of tick sprays that are natural based, but you have to reapply them a lot, often, like every couple hours. So, but tuck your pants into your boots, all the stuff they say. Showering immediately when you come inside, and check for them all the time. That's really the most important thing to do.
What eats the ticks?
What eats ticks? Possums eat ticks. Yes, possums and possibly raccoons. There is no evidence that guinea fowl or turkeys or chickens are effective. So.
All I wanted to say.
Please state your name.
Kiani Muffling, like at 32 Ox Pasture. From a parental perspective, you would have to, and I understand all the arguments, but you would have to come up with the most compelling reason, because there is no way, I can tell you honestly, that anyone in this room will stop spraying their property for ticks when they have small children. Already, like my daughter has been bitten by a Lyme tick this month, but I don't even let her play in the backyard. But my point is, it would have to be a very compelling argument that came. I understand your points, and they're wonderful, but you'd have to really put that forward. People are just not going. They'll tell you they'll stop, but on the tick front, a parent is not going to stop.
Well, they're not going to ban your tick.
No, I understand that. I'm just trying to tell you from a psychological perspective as a parent, there would have to be a very compelling, I'm not quite sure I understand how 70% of or 67% of the ticks come back, but there's 0% in disease.
Nobody quite understands that, yeah, and that's why they're doing this very expensive, very long-term thing. But I've kind of gotten this whole a little off track, and I would love for you to join me and a number of other concerned citizens in creating a forum about ticks. We need a lot more information.
That was my next point, which is you're talking about the symbol of the lake being, but yes, what is the plan for ticks? And
we need to do that. We need to get really good information. I am not the ultimate resource here.
And then I had one other question for the gentleman who controls the pipe, which is you said that the pipe is open, I believe, from I think it was 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. in the morning. Is there any evidence whatsoever that shows the effect, for what time period is the ocean affected? If that is the opening period at those volumes, has that work been done? So there should be like a statement to the public as to when is it safe to swim, not just on a wing and a prayer. We do it for these. There has to be like some level of science behind, this amount of hours, this amount of bandwidth between swimming. And I just had one other potential idea, and I don't know if you know the answer to that, which is, could you let less out over a couple of days so the immediate impact could be diluted more? So I know the volumes need to go down, but does it need to be open for 8-10 hours? Can it be open for 5 hours so that it's more diluted?
Okay. Thank you. Maybe, Russell, we can take all these questions and put out some type of release that answers them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Edwin.
Thank you.
Our next board presentation is regarding the Lake Agawam buoys, and we have Ryan Wallace, assistant to Dr. Gobler, to present. And I also wanted to thank Trustee Allen and Trustee Yastrzemski, who helped put this into place. So thank you, and welcome, Ryan.
Great, thanks for having me. So mine's kind of just really not as extensive, and I don't have as many nice visuals, but it was funny, I was thinking back, I first sampled Lake Agawam not quite as long ago as Chris, but 2009 was the first time I had been introduced to Lake Agawam. So I was just thinking about that. And since then, the technology and the type of sampling that we've done has changed quite a bit in the last 10 years. The buoy that we deployed, which has been deployed about a month now in the northwestern corner of Lake Agawam, is taking quite a robust amount of measurements with a multitude of parameters, really. And it's giving us data every 15 minutes. And one of the things that it's able to do, which is something that's really a new type of technology, is it actually can target the fluorescence or target, in a sense, the amount of cells of the specific type of cyanobacteria that's actually in the water. So we're getting not only measurements like dissolved oxygen, pH, temperature. We're also getting nitrate every 15 minutes, and we're also getting chlorophyll, which is total algae, as well as specific target pigments that are representative of certain types of algae, like cyanobacteria. Coupled with that, we've also been taking discrete measurements, as we've been doing for, I said 2009. I don't know how old Chris is, probably 5 years or so, at least before that. So we've been sampling pretty consistently within this lake for quite a long time now. One thing that was mentioned earlier, and I actually have nothing really up here, just some data that I pulled today from all of our sensors and from our databases from what we found so far. A couple of things that I noticed. Number one, on June 18th, we had a very dense cyanobacteria bloom that we pulled samples from, and it was highly toxic. It may have even, it's too early to say because a lot of this data has to be post-processed, but it's going to be close, if not break its old record. So it may have set a new record as far as toxic algae within this pond. The blooms in this pond started in early June, and the toxin concentrations in early June were above levels that are considered harmful for bathing. quite a bit higher for bathing. The bathing standard by the put out by the World Health Organization is about 4 micrograms per liter. Drinking is 1 micrograms per liter. The lowest we've seen it since we've been sampling in early June was 10. So it's over double the bathing limit, and obviously 10 times. And we've seen it, much higher than that, thousands of times higher than that, just within the last month or 6 weeks or so. An interesting thing about the buoy, we picked up during that toxic bloom that picked up on the buoy. It also picked up on our discrete samples. Right after that bloom occurred, because that bloom was so dense, it's probably safe to say that for a short period of time, the oxygen concentrations within the water column went very low to actually no oxygen, so hypoxic to anoxic conditions. It wasn't long enough period of time where you could have a fish kill, but the potential for something like that as the weather obviously warms up is that much greater. So this is an issue that's been plaguing this pond for quite some time and seems to be getting worse. And of course, we looked at nitrate concentrations in there. They're consistently high. We see some drawdowns when certain types of algae are utilizing it, but we know that nitrates are consistently high, within this pond as well. So this is kind of, preliminary. We've only been collecting data really for, 4 to 6 weeks, with this buoy and our sampling regime. But our sampling regime, and like I said, the technology that's come about within the last decade or so, really can give us a nice, robust picture of what's going on within this system. So that's all I got. If there's any questions or anything.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Trustee Allen, is there anything you'd like to add on this topic? I know you were very instrumental in getting this into place.
Well, I think Michael Irving and all of the previous board wanted a better read than just a few samples that were done on an intermittent basis, just because we wanted to understand what's driving it. I would have to say that's pretty scary, and I'm sure everybody in this room feels that way. I just had a general question. This may not be in your area of expertise, but an hour before coming to this meeting, there was an article on everybody's Google and Yahoo saying there's poop in the water of America's dirtiest beaches. And it's an organization called the Environment America Research and Policy Center. I don't know if you have anything to do with them, if they're legitimate.
I'm not familiar with them per se. I guess the article's referring to, certain types of probably pathogenic bacteria from fecal matter.
Bathing Corp was on it.
Yeah,
what is that?
So
Bathing Corp was on it.
Oh,
yeah. You can go to this website. If you go home, you can see this article. You click in New York State, and then you can zero in all over. And so, of course, the first place we went to was the Bathing Corporation, and the percentage of potentially unsafe days, which means you're in excess of an EPA threshold, was 20%. But then we looked at Amagansett, it's 29%. Quag Beach Club, it's 25%. Devon Yacht Club, I mean, it's all over. What's going on?
So it's hard to say just from the, I'm not really sure what these are percentages of days that could potentially be
unsafe for people to be in the water.
Yeah, so it's hard to say where the data is coming from. That being said, in many of our coastal systems, unfortunately, we have issues with pathogenic bacteria. Something like Lake Agawam, which, can potentially have pathogenic bacteria, is kind of suffering from a number of things. It also has toxic bacteria. So it's hard to say where that's coming from, but it's not surprising. I mean, our our infrastructure as far as sewage treatment facilities and lack of sewage treatment facilities, especially in Suffolk County, are really the cause of many issues that we're having. And one of those is pathogenic bacteria in our coastal systems. And as population increases, we could potentially have more pathogenic bacteria. So it's not surprising. You see that beaches are closed. The county tests for this. Has to test for this because people could really get sick. So it's not surprising. I'd like to look at that, so maybe I'll follow up because I'm not sure specifically.
Take this.
Oh, great.
But it's funny, you wouldn't be surprised, quite honestly, when you think about it, because every major municipality who has a treatment facility, after it's treated, where does it empty it to?
Sure, and
one thing into the water. So
Thank you very much.
I don't know anybody's.
So, well, one thing that's, to be noted, I mean, we're also on, some, thank you, quite dated systems in which I'm sure probably everybody in this room knows we have these combined sewage overflow events. So when we get, rain like something today that happened, our sewage systems and our drainage systems are interconnected, and, the flow that it cannot be supported within our sewage treatment facility, so it actually overflows raw sewage into our coastal systems. And most of those overflow locations and even most of the treated outflow locations are also dated, so they're in areas that may have been cheaper to build at the time or easier to access at the time, but they may not be in the location that's most beneficial for water quality.
That's why I think you see a lot of those more on the sound beaches, Long Island Sound beaches, because it's not as you don't have the waves as much from the ocean flowing.
Sure,
through.
and a lot of these,
a lot of those.
Yeah, and a lot of these areas, the sound. There's also many regions on the South Shore, and just some examples. Thinking of if you've ever been in Nassau County, a Bay Park sewage treatment plant, the outflow at that location is now going to be diverted. There's a big project going on to divert that out to another outfall that goes offshore. But for many years, I don't think you've been able to eat shellfish in that area since the 1950s or something like that. And areas even further, you go to Jamaica Bay, it's 100 years you haven't been able to eat shellfish in there. And you go into the East, it gets worse and worse as you move closer to these.
I mean, that's why when Hurricane Sandy came up, it really exposed and just a lot of the systems and the inefficiencies of the system.
And in some ways, it was good because some of these systems were then able to be repaired and upgraded, as a Bay Park treatment plant. So sometimes it takes some type of catastrophe really to kind of upgrade and make our infrastructure better. But that's, Suffolk County deals with a little bit different type of problem in which, we have this slow groundwater leaching from our septic systems. So this is kind of a little bit harder to, kind of contain and deal with and kind of pinpoint, where these sources are, because this groundwater is moving so slowly, it may take years to tens of years to actually reach these systems. So we may be seeing the results of, this infrastructure that was put in 50 to, even 100 years ago. So,
and that's actually what your cohort had said, that a lot of the damage that we're addressing now didn't just happen.
Sure.
It happened decades ago. Took decades to get here. Unfortunately, it's not going to be fixed overnight either.
No, it's not, and I think that's one of the toughest things to see, even as a scientist looking at these, looking at models of groundwater movement and things like that. I think that's one of the most difficult things to look at, because you're doing this work, and yes, you may get something passed or do some good work, and then treatment facilities or septic systems may be upgraded, but you may never, my children may never see the results of that. But it's something that has to be dealt with.
You got to start somewhere, right?
Exactly. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
So our next board presentation will be by Charlie McGuckin from RU Environmental Engineering. Charlie is an engineer who specializes in water and other water body remediations. We met through Bill Chaliff, who was presented to us before, as well as to our Village Planning Commission. And also Charlie specializes in natural treatment systems, which is a new technology that will allow us to reduce nitrogen and do some other positive things to our waterways. So I will turn it over to Charlie. He's got a brief presentation for us, and he's also available for questions as well. So thank you for coming, Charlie.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Yes, again, I'm Charlie McGuckin. My company is RU Associates. We're an environmental consulting firm. We're based in Islandia. We're a pretty big firm. We have 300 people. Environmental engineering is solely what we do, so this is what we focus on. We're born in the Superfund cleanup world, so we're familiar with groundwater treatment. We got into natural treatment systems about 20 years ago, in the early to mid-90s. We haven't done a lot on Long Island because there was a little bit of a learning curve and a lobbying effort to get the health departments to accept the efficacy of natural treatment systems. So I think we're there today, and it's a terrific thing. Okay, so I just wanted to state the problem. It's been studied a long time, but I just thought briefly I could state the problem here. In recent decades or so, the toxic blue-green algae has become much more significant in Lake Agawam. It's not the only lake of concern. That multiple lakes in the village are also of concern. Lake Agawam is unique in that it is much more of a problem from nitrogen from septic systems. Forgive me for talking both ways here. Where town pond is definitely a higher percentage of fertilizer and phosphorus related. So not every lake or pond is the same. This particular one is much more nitrogen driven. So we have degraded water quality. It's harmful to the aquatic life. There have been fish kills, and of course, it's toxic to humans, or can be harmful to humans, I should say. Definitely toxic to animals. So that recreation is prohibited at this time. So this is from Stony Brook report from Dr. Gobler, and I just thought it was maybe the simplest summary of the contributions of nitrogen loading to Lake Agawam. And so if you add up the wastewater and the wastewater generally in the community and the wastewater from Main Street, you add those two up, and it's about 70% is associated with septic system contributions, which unfortunately means it's a very large area and harder to focus the solution. But as was mentioned, lawns and fertilizer about 8%, stormwater runoff 4%, and then resuspension of sediments that are already impacted is also a pretty significant contribution of 14%. So this is what we're dealing with, and I think there are a number of solutions. From Dr. Gobler's report, from his analysis, if you can reduce the nitrogen loading by 33%, you therefore can reduce the toxicity by even greater, because some amount of algae is actually good for the water body. And with this approach, then you could make it safe for habitat and recreation and increase the value, and then ultimately down the road allow for increased either businesses or at least allowing for additional wastewater flow. Maybe you don't have to be so concerned about the capacity of your septic system at times when evenings or when the usage is high. So here's some possible solutions. There's 9 items here. I believe that the solution is going to require some combination of 6 or 7 of these. It's not one solution. Sewage collection is something that is going to be necessary to really, for long term. It's going to take time. But I think you have the downtown area, and then you have other areas, and really I think ideally there would be not just downtown sewage collection, but community-based collection and treatment elsewhere, outside. Stormwater management has been talked about. There are definitely been improvements in stormwater, but if you go to the lake, you see that there's an awful lot of road very close to the edge of the water body, and that's not really a great situation for the water body. So vegetated buffers and drainage swales has been mentioned. Those are pretty common in our developed world now, and I think those are definitely part of the solution. Suffolk County has really put a lot of emphasis on individual homeowner septic systems advanced treatment. They have money for that out there for homeowners. There's approved designers and installers. So really that program is in place, and if you really are looking to do something, you can make an improvement by advancing your own wastewater system yourself. Next three categories in green, the engineered treatment wetland systems. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. I could really only pick one of these to talk about today in some level of detail. That's a natural treatment system that can treat and remove nitrogen such that you could discharge it back to the water body. And I do think there's a very good application for that here. Permeable reactive barrier is something that can be done below ground to try to intercept the contaminated water. I think there's an application for that too, but there has to be a place around the pond perimeter for that, and it might depend on the data in the pond. Where is the most of it coming from? That's where you'd want to target. Sediment dredging. I've done dredging projects on Long Island because over time, over decades, the sediment from the stormwater, from the streets, from sanding the streets during the wintertime, ultimately it gets into the lowest point in your drainage system. And in this case, it would be the lakes and ponds. So the reason to remove it is because there is contamination in the sand in the bottom of the pond. You do want to have a minimum water depth in the water body to make it healthy. If it's only a few feet deep, it would be much better to dredge out some amount of material where it's shallowest. That is fairly expensive, but sort of not quite on the order of magnitude of expensive as a sewage collection system, but something to be considered, not for the entire lake, but maybe in the headwaters and where stormwater drainage enters the lake.
Charlie, sorry to interrupt you. How expensive would that be? Question number one. And question number two, would that help us with our drainage problem if we increase the depth of the lake?
Generally, what the dredging is going to do is it's going to it's not a permanent solution. You're going to remove an amount of material, and the multiple projects I've done, we essentially dredged as much as the grant money would allow us, and in both cases it was around $750,000. Because it costs money to dewater and dredge the material out, and then you have to dispose of that material. Generally, the material has to be disposed in a landfill. It's unlikely it could be placed anywhere else for beneficial use. So, although all of those things would be evaluated. So I think you really have to be strategic in where you would dredge, to be able to get the most benefit. It's a little bit better to try to capture all of that sediment before it goes in the water body, but it's already there, so some amount really would be a good idea to remove.
On that topic, if I may, dredging, it's been brought up in the past and about how effective it can be, and you brought up where do we put it? I don't know what landfill is going to take it, but it's getting rid of toxic sediment has been brought up as by Goldberg, as a matter of fact, as an issue. So if you're getting about $750,000 $750,000 roughly, are you aware of the size of Lake Agawam? And if that were the average grant one gets, what would that actually accomplish in Lake Agawam? Or do you know? I'm sorry, that's premature.
I mean, we're really only talking about a fraction. We're talking about a couple acres. But if you tell me that in particular areas the sediment has accumulated and the majority of the pond, it really is 9 or 10 feet deep, except for these few areas, then I might say, well, I think it's worth targeting the areas where that is.
So you can target it and still be as effective.
Right. You'd have to do a bathymetric survey, so you're sounding to find where it's the most shallow. Yes.
I have a question. Don't. You got to come up.
Paul, you know the rules.
Paul, if you can make it on the quicker side just so we can get through it.
Hi, Paul Bolo, Southampton, New York. I just had a quick question for you regarding dredging. You had mentioned about the toxicity and removing of the sludge. Would there be any percolation benefit of drainage, increased drainage through the ponds as opposed through the method that we're using now, opening up a drainage pipe to the ocean?
Well, probably a bigger benefit would be you're providing greater capacity. So right now the lake has a certain capacity, right? So if you can deepen it, then there's a greater capacity. You have to open the pipe less. But it would be most likely to be very expensive to make a significant volume increase. But over the time, the lake capacity has decreased. So that's part of the problem.
Will the lake, my question is would the lake drain down naturally if you were to remove the toxic sediment?
No, because it's groundwater fed, so it's not going to drain down. It has a constant flow.
Right, there's a constant flow of water from road runoff.
The only way to decrease it.
Yeah, no more from the groundwater, not the road runoff, coming up from groundwater.
And Paul, I know Peter and Nick, who are 10 years old, need to get home, so I want to keep this moving.
All right, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Sorry.
Just wait till questions to the end, maybe.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
maybe we'll hold off on the questions. Sorry, that was my fault.
And then just to quickly get through this, because I would like to just go through one example of a solution here, but there are other possible solutions, including increased circulation to decrease the amount of algae. Ultrasound is something that's been used a lot in water bodies to decrease the cell sizes and the algae growth. And biological treatment is something that I think would be absolutely a good application here. I think biological treatment probably makes the most sense because, that we would be able to use natural plant life to be able to, and degradation to take up the nitrogen. So I thought I would just go through one possible concept here. I talked a little bit about a flow-through treatment barrier, some solids removal within the lake itself. If you could provide maybe a sacrificial section of the lake where you would focus the solids removal, I don't know if that's so attractive for everybody. And then lastly, I think if you could remove water either from the lake or immediately upgrading of the lake, you could treat that water on land and then discharge it back, and you would be able to filter the water and treat it through bioremediation. A constructed treatment wetland is something that my company specializes in for a long time. We've done work internationally. We have a system in Brentwood right now that we're getting permitted for a large facility in that location. Really very similar to this. So that system would treat about 500 homes, for example. The cost of a system of that size is, we're doing a design-build project, it's about $850,000 for that type of system. So it's like a community-based size.
Could you elaborate what that type of system is?
Yes.
I know it's door number 3, but what exactly?
Okay, so this is what we're talking about for a recommended wastewater treatment system using natural processes. So we're talking about natural processes here, biological, physical. We're talking about filtration, chemical absorption, biological treatment, just like that's in your wastewater treatment plant. It's taking these natural processes where we're enhancing some of those to shrink the size down to make it more effective. We're also adding some things like liners and piping and pumps to be able to manage the wastewater. So we're talking about a subsurface, gravel-filled, planted biological filter. Two main types, surface flow and subsurface flow. Surface flow is usually when you want to try to modify an existing water body. Subsurface flow is more of a constructed version where you would build that on land. You're pumping the water to it, and all of the water is below grade. There's no surface water. You don't have concerns about mosquitoes or standing water. Everything is just below the gravel surface. The plant root systems are into the water flow. So everything is flowing through this gravel horizontally with a planted surface.
So, Charlie, something that looks like that could treat 500 homes?
Correct. In about an acre and a half.
And
we need space. It's, that's the downside. You need space. So if you have property, This is something that you can do. It's not unattractive. This is a diagram of free water surface system. This is a system that we designed and built for a industrial facility in Texas. This is an example of a system up in upstate New York, Onondaga. This is a floating wetland system, so there you're putting plants right out into the water body, and you're pumping your wastewater through the plants to treat it. I don't know if it's not the best, most efficient application. It is more efficient if we can do it on land, because the root systems have a better chance to grow and function. But
what is this particular example you said on Onondaga?
Yes.
This is an actual septic? Like this is an actual treatment facility?
This is for a combined sewer overflow treatment facility for the Syracuse system. So they have overflows, combined sewers, and they have overflows. So this treats that water.
And we could put this on the lake, for example.
You can put this on the lake. This is not as common as the systems that are built on land, but it's definitely an option. It's more of an option along the perimeter. If you're willing to put in systems along the perimeter of the lake, this is definitely an option. The subsurface systems are, I would say, more common for wastewater system treatment. Here you have a series of chambers that are about this big, and we blow air through them. So water comes in the side, it's pumped in, it flows horizontally through. We're blowing air through to create nitrification, and then through the gravel section, and then we have a natural, locally available wood chip section where we're doing denitrification. So you're aerating the one side, and then you have a anaerobic treatment on the other side.
Question?
Okay.
I'm Tony Piazza.
No, you have to come up. You have to come up.
Water treatment or cleaning up Lake Agawam?
I believe they're one and the same, but maybe...
So just repeat it again?
Yeah. Tony Piazza, 27 Henry Street.
Thank you so much.
I'm just concerned, are you talking about treating wastewater as in septic wastewater or cleaning up Lake Agawam? Because you're using wastewater interchangeably with...
It's the same nitrogen in the lake that's in your wastewater. It's more concentrated in
Okay,
wastewater.
so you allow
It's
it
more
to
diluted.
leave the home and let it go into the lake and treat it in the lake. So the lake becomes a septic treatment.
I wouldn't treat it in the lake. No, I would pump it out. And treat
That
it
was
on
an
the lake.
example upstate. That's why I was asking what
It's a
exactly.
little confusing.
So that was an overflow. I think he's recommending more a subsurface off the lake.
Okay.
I mean, that was one option I was
Is that
talking
correct,
about.
Mayor? I think that's really what he's going for.
That's right. I mean, we are basically having our lake become our cesspool, which is, we don't want that to happen. But obviously, the water that we are putting, our wastewater that is from our schools, from our homes, from our restaurants, is just going, as we know, going right into our groundwater and is getting into our lake. So obviously, what Charlie's discussing is a way for it to go to the treatment center first. And then that other diagram or the other illustration was maybe even a supplemental thing that could be done in addition to the wastewater treatment. I guess Gary has one more thing, and then we'll keep on moving.
I'm just curious, what is the maximum distance for a piece of property that you could use near the lake? If we were out there looking for properties that we could talk about,
Right.
How far away could we get?
Well, it's really all about pumping and conveying the wastewater. So you got to get the wastewater to the treatment system. If you can, so you're going to pump it one way or the other. So if the treatment system was near the lake, you would most likely have to pump the wastewater to the system, and then if it was really close, it could flow by gravity back into the lake. But if it's not that close, you can build this somewhere else in the community to capture wastewater from pretty much anywhere in the community.
If you're talking lake alone, we might have something that's a quarter mile away. Could we do a pipe there and a pipe back?
You can do, it can all be pumped to and from, yes.
But is it the most optimum situation is to have it as close to the source as so we have basically, ideally, what you would like to see is a piece of property directly adjacent or close enough to the Lake Agawam. Let's not say waste, we're talking about Lake Agawam here. So your idea is to pump the water from Lake Agawam into a piece of land with this system, and then it filters through and feeds it back into, probably through gravity,
Ideally.
back into the lake.
Yes. I mean, the system's going to function. You're going to need to pump the water into the system. You can flow by gravity out, so you would generally need it to be pumped too. This is an example of a system being installed. You do need to install a liner. It's about 3 or 4 feet deep. It has to be lined. You're putting in piping. You're aerating. And then you're filling this with gravel. You do have it's an engineered system. It relies on natural processes, but it is an engineered system. This is a nice kind of diagram of you have piping in gravel and then planted and root systems above. And you can see on the one side is the gravel, and on the other side is the wood chip section. So you have aerobic treatment and anaerobic treatment.
So how much land would you need to treat Lake Agawam?
So we would not be able to, in other words, handle all of the water in Lake Agawam. But if we're talking about running a system to reduce the water level to, for example, reduce the need to open up your discharge pipe, now we're talking about something that's beneficial, because you can run this system all the time. You don't have to only run it at night, for example. It's really ideally, it needs to run all the time. It's meant to run all the time. So this would be maybe solving, multiple purposes here: nitrogen removal and the beach safety.
Could we look at this as sort of a way to buy time? I mean, it sounds like it would be useful forever, but if it actually solved part of the problem of the lake, cleaning up the lake, while we work on more long-term solutions. Do people do it for that reason, or is it an actual part of a whole solution plan?
Well, this is going to be a piece. It's not the only solution. I don't know that this is necessarily the right fit for all of your community's wastewater problems, but I think it's been used as a fit for certain facilities, small community-based systems, neighborhood-based systems, and I think it has an application here. The reason I think the wetland system is good is because you can pump water from the lake, or you can take wastewater. The difference in concentrations, won't be a problem. I mean, you may modify how you operate it, but it really could handle different fluctuations in concentration and some fluctuation in flow. It does have some ability because we can load it up with water, add some more head space.
And design and installation is months or years?
It's really more about the permitting that takes time. Design is a few months, permitting's a good 6 months with some pressure.
I don't think you need any.
With some pressure on the health department, I'm sure working with the health department. No, listen, they're very excited about new technologies also. They have really put a lot of emphasis. They have people dedicated to just reviewing these systems now, which didn't exist 5 years ago. So it is really a different world today. So advanced wastewater treatment is here on Long Island, thankfully.
Thank you.
And just lastly, a picture of a system we built in Kingston, New York. So this is 50,000 gallons per day. So you're talking about a community-based size system. This actually was an industrial facility. This is an animal testing facility, Charles River Labs. So that's what this is for, but this is what it looks like. And this is 50,000 gallons per day. It's about an acre in size, 2 cells. And this was approved through New York State Department of Health, actually.
Charles, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What about the use of existing sumps? We have sumps in the village where water goes in there.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have said, the one thing about this system is it doesn't include the upfront primary sedimentation, which is the function of a septic tank. So if we're going to take raw wastewater, it'd have to be pumped from the septic tanks. So we would keep the septic tanks. If in this scenario, you would be adding a pump to the septic tank and pumping from there. Everybody would still be responsible to maintain their own septic tank.
What about sumps? There's particular areas in the village that has areas where water from streets run off into it, and therefore it leaches right into the ground. I know I have 2 in an area where I live. Could they be utilized at some point or retrofitted to get this going to start doing pilot programs?
You know, if we could pinpoint the primary sources of nitrogen, and if it were the storm drains or areas of the lake where the concentrations were heaviest, we could pump from the storm drains, we could pump from groundwater wells, we could pump from extraction trenches or sumps. So we're used to doing groundwater extraction because of groundwater contamination. So those kinds of things, that technology is there. It's just a question of targeting it to make best use and remove the most mass. So yes, if it makes sense. So that's what I had for today. I just wanted to, again, go through.
I actually have one more question before we're done, and then that is it for our board presentations. Have you identified a property or properties that might be a good fit for this type of system in Southampton Village?
Well, I had read an article a few months back about a property on Pond Lane that was recently purchased. And I thought, gee, 2.9 acres right next to the lake. You couldn't ask for a better size and location, quite frankly. I mean, we generally don't get such an opportunity to do something like this where it's needed. So the location is ideal. The jobs that we've done have been typically on large properties that have space. The one we're doing in Brentwood is a very large campus for the Sisters of St. Joseph's facility there. Those are the types of facilities where this can happen because you have enough space.
How much is the Pond Lane property sold for?
Wayne?
That's a town purchase. It's not the village purchase. And I believe it was $10 million for the purchase.
CPF funds.
And what is the CPF or the town doing with that property?
Park, recreation, and open space.
Is this treated like a park, or, I mean?
No, I mean, it really is a functioning system. It looks very nice. It is often used as an educational opportunity to teach students about environmental engineering and science. Can definitely be used. It will require sampling on a routine basis, so that's another opportunity for learning and evaluating effectiveness. But it's a functioning system, and much like a stormwater bioswale, it has a function. And generally, it is, although it is attractive looking, it would be fenced in, chain link fence. But you can have educational signs, and I would think you could make it still attractive, and you wouldn't use up the entire property in that instance. But it's not like your typical park. You could definitely put a hiking trail around the outside.
But do you think part of the CPF directives as of late has been put towards water treatment? Do you think, since this is considered, it is a water treatment facility, do you think, or do you have any experience of how CPF purchased land views that? Is it a qualified use of it? Or?
I don't personally have that experience with CPF funds. I mean, clearly their only purpose would be water quality improvement. So there's no other reason to do it other than environmental water quality.
I mean, Rich, I would say if we wanted to do this and then CPF was the one that told us no, we have a real problem with CPF.
Correct. No, I agree. Because again, that's why I was saying that part of the directive is they've changed the rules so they can use it for water treatment. And if we want to use part of CPF, part of, as he's pointing out, and even all of it, to treat water, it's kind of counterintuitive that they would say, no, we can't do that.
The reason I thought that this might be a good application is because knowing that the nearness to this lake.
Yeah, of course.
You don't want a big, ugly building wastewater system. So I just thought that maybe this type of system would fit better into the surroundings.
Sure.
So I have one last question about that, which is the aesthetics are pretty good when you look at your photos, because you didn't show the chain link fence or whatever that goes around it. But what about odor? What about anything else that might accompany the project?
So the subsurface system is just like it shows. So it's all below grade. So you don't have open water, and everything is either in a pipe, a chamber, or below ground. So the chance of odor would be if there was some significant upset, or if it flooded for some reason from a terrible storm disaster, or if there was a malfunction. So it is possible, although we generally would like to put in overflow system design, something, that in the event of power failures, that there was some place for this wastewater to go so that it wouldn't pond up or get onto the street or somewhere. But in its functioning form, there's no exposed wastewater. And once it's operating, you're not going to have odor.
And there's no venting system. So that's a lot of times what produces odor in some facilities is because there's some venting.
Yeah, I mean,
and
it is...
This doesn't have any venting going on?
It's sort of even. So you're essentially, the water is flowing in this gravel and planted bed. It's there about 8 inches below grade. You can walk right out over the top of it, and there's no water. It won't get wet. Your feet won't get wet. You can walk right out over it. The reason for the fence is because it's a functioning system, and it's just no business being in there without someone giving you a
Well, let me
tour.
ask one step further then. Since it's CPF, and that's where we're kind of leaning towards here, could there be a way where that could be something put over it where you can actually walk over it? Can it be land still usable for park use, even if it's not walked over, but still, if it needs to? Maybe not basketball courts per se, but something where it has access to the public.
I guess I kind of would equate it more similar to a natural habitat that is meant only for, say, species to be in. So humans aren't supposed to be in it. Now you can walk around those, and they're there, and you can look at them. We could separate like different cells so that there's a walking path in between. But generally, I would say,
No, you answered it. Thank you.
All right, we'll do one more question, and then we'll keep the meeting moving. Please come on. We know who you are, though, by the way.
As you can tell, I'm intrigued. We have a heavy deer browse problem in the village, and I'm just wondering if you guys have done any of these systems where deer are a potential problem, because I know that in my design work with the one in East Hampton, I had to be very selective, because even our native plant material would be gone in a matter of time. So how would you deal with, I know that only certain types of plant material can be used in these systems? And have you had any experience with dealing with the deer pressure on them?
Yeah, we have, thus the reason for the fencing. And so we do need to keep them fenced in. There are options. We've
4 feet isn't going to do the trick.
Right, no. I don't believe we've ever done anything higher than 6 feet tall, but I guess we'd have to evaluate that. There are options on the plants, but I don't think there'd be an option that we would find plants that deer wouldn't eat. So it is a concern.
All right. Thank you, Charlie. This was an extremely informative presentation. I know we all enjoyed it, and thank you.
If I could ask, I'd like to get a copy of this presentation.
And everyone, now is probably a good opportunity. Unless we're interested.
It's on here.
Kids are interested in the public hearing.
That's on our computer?
Yeah. Tennis courts. Probably now is a good time to leave if you're looking for a break. But we would encourage you to stay. Okay, so thank you, everyone, for remaining here for our public hearing. The proposed local law requiring landscaping and screening of tennis courts and flag lots. So I either believe Russell or Wayne will...
Well, we're going to entertain a motion to open the hearing.
Okay. So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So to give you a summary, this is a continuation of the public hearing from the last meeting. This is a proposed amendment to the zoning code. Currently, the zoning code requires that someone constructing a tennis court or constructing on a flagpole lot that they submit with their building permit application, which is then referred to the planning board for approval of a landscape plan and particularly for screening around the tennis court. The planning board and building department and the engineers have developed a set of specifications over the last 20 years that are pretty standard, including the sinking of a tennis court, 3 feet, necessary drainage, and a certain protocol on landscaping. This proposed law would look at allowing the building inspector to take those specifications that then pretty much become boilerplate and incorporate those into a building permit application. And if a landowner comes in and meets those specifications, they do not have to go to the planning board, take up 2 or 1 or 2 meetings at the planning board and the necessary review by the planning board. They can focus on other matters. This is a recommendation from Chris. Chris is in the audience with us. Of course, if a landowner doesn't agree with the specifications or wants to modify them, then they can, of course, make an application to the planning board to do that. You did receive a report from the Suffolk County Planning Commission, and you also received a report a couple days ago from the Village Planning Commission, who looked at this at their last meeting, and they recommend approval of the proposal in front of you.
Okay. Should we have Chris step forward?
Good evening, members of the board. Wayne was spot on with the intent, legislative intent on the purpose of the law. I'm just here to answer any questions you may have in regards to it.
And sir, you are who?
Chris Talbot, Senior Building Inspector for the village.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to see you.
Thanks for staying so late, Chris.
Thank you.
So Chris, essentially there's kind of a standard that the planning board has accepted over time and that the village feels is adequate. Maybe you can just kind of...
Yeah, the intent how it takes place with the tennis courts. Tennis courts are sunk in the village. One of the only municipalities that requires it, but that's the standard here now. And we don't really get any complaints on it from the public. They sink 3 foot down and then put in adequate drainage to protect their investment in the property. They also screen the tennis courts, the code states, from the neighboring parcels or from the street. And we very, very rarely get any complaints regarding noise. If we do, it's few and far between. But this will streamline the process for the residents, but also we'll be able to keep the fees that we now pass on to consultants to review the drainage plan that is required and the landscape plan that is required. So instead of us passing that fee along, the village will get to keep the fee, the entire fee.
And Chris, we average about 10 a year, right, on the tennis courts?
Not too many more than that. In the last 10 to 15 years, that's a good average. Do you want to discuss the flag lots yet, or take them one at a time? All right, the flag lot landscaping plans, which were in the code for a long time and really came up in recent years on one particular parcel on Hill Street. At that time, we reviewed the code and said, it has to go in front of the planning board. So they have been going in front of the planning board, and then the accompanied house that go on the lots then have to go in front of the architectural review board, which often have a different take from the neighbors when these houses are presented to that board. So they're also requiring particular landscaping designs for the houses. So it was my feeling that instead of the planning board reviewing these landscape plans on the flag lots, it's best for the architectural review board and us in the building department to review them after we hear concerns from the neighbors. So we'll send it now, as we do, to the architectural review board, and then when they approve a plan, that will become part of the building permit. And we'll again save time from the planning board, and we'll make it a little bit easier in having one board approve it instead of two boards.
Okay. Thank you.
Right? Okay.
That's pretty logical. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the initiative to do that. I think it's great, actually, when your team is giving us some guidance and helping to streamline the process, taking the workload off the planning board. All good things. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Chris.
Any members of the public?
Any members of the public have any comments?
I do.
Okay. Please come on down. Thank you. And thank you for your patience.
This is about this public hearing.
No.
Okay.
No, it's not public comment yet.
Come back.
No public comment.
yeah, no.
Come back.
Yes.
You got a few minutes.
Will it be this century?
Yes.
Yes. We hope so.
Hopefully.
So you have the option of closing the public hearing. You could keep it open if you thought there was any need for further comment. You have already held this open once. No further comments. You could close the public hearing, and if you're inclined, like I said, you have the Planning Commission reports, so you have the jurisdiction to consider a notice of adoption after you close the hearing.
With that said, I'm fine to make a motion to close the hearing.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so it sounds as though the board would entertain a motion to adopt a local law amending Chapter 116-9A 11F and 116-11F6 to require landscaping and screening of tennis courts and flagpole lots as per specifications of the building inspector, and that would be local law number 8 of 2019. Is there a motion?
So moved.
For a second?
Second.
Trustee Yastrzemski.
Aye.
Trustee Allen.
Aye.
Mayor Warren.
Aye.
Trustee Parrish.
Aye.
Trustee Polero.
Aye.
Resolution passes.
Excellent. Wayne, can we move the second public hearing up now, or do we have to wait until
I think it's totally up to you. Given the number of people, if you want to give them an opportunity, and you do not have any communication, so you might want to dump that. That's up to you.
So we do not have any communications to the board. So with that said, we will move our second public comment up until now. So we'd love to give you an opportunity to present.
Earlier this evening, or about 2,000 years ago, we were at the town board where 3 resolutions were withdrawn because Mr. Bruin raised some objections which we're very grateful for. questioning the transfer of affordable housing rights, parklands, alienation of parklands. This came up. It's being raced through by Mr. Schneiderman, and it was halted by a question because of a village boundary line. That's all we know at this point. We know that you raised the question, and we're glad to have this process held up for a bit so that we can advise you that we are not in favor of more affordable housing in Tuckahoe. We will fight it. It is near the Morrow property, which we have fought over before. And I'm here to renew my request to this board that if you have any desire to proceed with affordable housing, we request that you do, or you convince the town to do in conjunction with you, an adequate survey of all of the properties that will be appropriate for affordable housing that exist. Also, all of the Section 8 housing that exists in the village before you move forward case by case on this. And I would like to know, it's the attorney who advanced the resolutions tonight to be passed into law. She said that she had spoken with the village, and it was just a formality. She felt something about to send something off to Albany, and the village would be right in line with them to do this transfer, which many people feel has a very, very queer odor about it. So that is why I spent the remaining hours of my life here tonight to advise you that. Thank you for raising the question. Could you give us any information about that tonight?
By the way, would you mind just stating your name and address for us,
My
please?
name is Frances Genovese. I live at 209 Bishop's Lane, Southampton. So can you, Mr. Bruin, advise us, what happened between the town and the village, or why the village was so late, actually, in making an objection to this?
Well, if the mayor would want me to speak.
Please,
The village is not objecting to affordable housing or the town swap. We have really no say in the matter. However, their issue that they're trying to do involves land that is adjacent to the village's land, and there is a question on the boundary line, and we asked and just pointed out to them there's some things that need clarification as to exactly where the boundary lines and whether or not they were including any portion of the village's property in their so-called swap of labels on the properties that they're trying to do. One label has a label of affordable housing on it, and the other is park, recreation, and open space. And I think the attempt by the town board is just to swap the labels from the property. So right now, they have a property that is dedicated to the town for affordable housing purposes, and what they were looking at is the environmental sensitivity of that parcel versus the other parcel, and they're attempting to swap. The issue, though, for the village is totally only about the boundary lines and whether or not they're including any of our property in any of their descriptions. And we asked them to take a step back and just clarify that with us, in which this board is getting up to speed and learning about those issues. And the town attorneys assured us that the town board would sit down with us and figure out what the boundary line issues are and resolve those.
But before you identified the boundary issues, how was the village notified that the town was intending?
We read it in the newspaper.
You read it in the newspaper, so that is a problem. The other problem is this is more than a switching of a label. This is environmentally sensitive. This is the erosion of the CPF funds, and this is a notice that we don't want it, and we will fight it tooth and nail. So that's all I have to say tonight.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, Francis.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment, second public comment this evening? Okay. Trustee Welker, nice to see you.
Nice to see all of you. Ann Welker, Southampton Town Trustee. Welcome to the new members of the board and the new mayor. I'm so excited that you're here with us now. I'd like to address a couple things this evening. First of all, your presentations were great, and it was exciting to see the number of people who were here to benefit from those presentations. And it's exciting that you're geared towards Lake Agawam in much of what was addressed tonight. I want to talk just quickly about a couple things in no particular order with this, but one thing that you might want to address with the Lake Agawam pipe, there's just also, please remember that there's also a pipe at Old Town Beach, so when you're notifying and signing about Lake Agawam, you might also want to address that as well. Second thing, last summer, at the end of the summer, we have a similar situation when the Mecox Bay and Sag Pond cuts are opened by the trustees, in that those water bodies are also potentially they contain toxins. So I was so concerned at the last week of August last summer, when there's really high bathing populations at Sag Pond, about that cut being open and what would be released into the bathing beach, because at that point Sag Pond had a blue-green algae bloom. I called and spoke with Dr. Christopher Gobler at that point, and according to Dr. Gobler, when blue-green algae goes from a fresh or brackish water body, such as Lake Agawam and Sag Pond, and when it hits the high salinity of the ocean beaches, he didn't give a time frame specifically, but he said that when that transfer occurs from the lower salinity to the very high salinity of the ocean, the blue-green algae degrades very rapidly. So I don't know in an overnight situation or within a couple hours or minutes, but it's very fast. So just so you know that, I was hoping that Dr. Ryan Wallace would address that this evening, but I wanted to make you aware of that because it was so concerning to me at that point. And not that there aren't other contaminants within that water when the pipes are opened, but the blue-green algae at least is immediately or quickly affected. Okay, I also wanted now, moving away from that, I also wanted to just address Dr. Ryan Wallace's presentation tonight. We're so grateful to the village, to the former administration, to the present administration for the partnership with the buoy. It is not, unfortunately, a buoy that has access to the public at this point, but maybe going forward, that telemetry will be similar to the buoys on Georgica Pond and also what will be in Mecox Bay. Those buoys, you can go on those websites and look at dissolved oxygen, salinity, just the host of variables that are all present as parameters that are being tested. Just staying within Lake Agawam for a moment, the bubblers that the town and that the trustees and the village have there, perhaps just a couple thoughts for something that could be done immediately. You have bubblers now in the north end of the lake and in the south end of the lake. Perhaps in the middle portion of the lake, a few more could be installed. That was something that was addressed tonight by Charles from the Rue organization. He mentioned that increased circulation would make a difference. Perhaps that could be something that would be done immediately. If you're looking for something that's got, hopefully, sooner rather than later benefits, perhaps the installation of more bubblers would be something that could be looked into. A second thing that I think was not mentioned tonight, but that the mill pond is a similar situation, a freshwater body that's also very impacted by road runoff and also by harmful algal blooms. So in mill pond, what's being done with the consultation of limnologists, They're suggesting the removal of carp, the species of fish carp. So what's known, and there are many people that have worked on this in the past, not in the near distant past, but in the past, carp have been removed from Lake Agawam. It was done, I think it was done by hull seining or some type of seining, and by baymen. There are other methods that are perhaps more effective, but I would suggest that that could be looked into. Just as a matter of course, because the trustees were working with the homeowners and the watermill community, we also to get permits from the DEC for the removal of carp. It was at the suggestion of President Ed Warner that we also obtained carp removal permits from the DEC for Lake Agawam and Old Town Pond. So those permits are already in effect. The DEC, we got them last year, and we've been renewing them to keep them, and they're renewable just quarterly, and all they want to know is if there have been any fish removed and what the poundage is. So it's something that can be done. Also, I think Charles of the Rue organization mentioned that the sediment disturbance is a factor that affects the quality of the water. Carp, when they feed, are bottom feeders. They disturb the sediment. If there's a lesser population of carp within the pond, this might be something that would help. I'm going to kind of wrap it up. I have quite a few points that as I listen tonight, but there's just two more things I want to address. One, there's a company on Long Island that has made a presentation to the town trustees, and I don't think they've come here yet, but I think it's been discussed. Fabco is the name of the company. They produce filters that go into the stormwater drains. Those filters can be, some of them are, you can have like an additional barrier that treats bacteria. So that's another thing. Those three things you might want to look into, that something could be done, not a lot of money, not a lot of time, and hopefully provide some type of helpful difference in the lake. And the last thing that I'd like to say is just thank you to everybody. And it really comes back around to each of us what we can do, whether it's installing a buffer or encouraging our neighbor to install a buffer, whether it's upgrading our septic system or looking at a community-wide septic system. It's just all of us making a difference. So thank you to all of you. Yes.
Can I just ask you one thing?
Sure.
I know it's not really appropriate in public comment, so I'll even break my own rules and say it and asking you. The carp removal plan, somewhat controversial to some people who just didn't understand it. That was, I remember reading about it. Was last year or two seasons ago, or when did you actually do that? And how did it go?
Okay, so I don't know all these details. I reached out to other members of the board this evening, and unfortunately, none of them were able to attend. So I can get back to you. I know a little. I don't know a lot. There were carp removed from Mill Pond, and from what I understand, it was an effective removal, but carp reproduce very quickly, and it's difficult to get all of them. They're very smart fish.
And if I remember, too, the goal wasn't to completely eradicate them. It was just to reduce.
Right, yes.
And even at that, not even a large number or a large percentage, but to do, because I remember some people questioning, whether they were eradicating the species, and that wasn't the case. It was reducing, and to how much. And
From what I understand, there's a robust population, not only of carp, but of freshwater bass, of sunnies, and of perch in Lake Agawam. So you would be specifically targeting the carp. Again, I don't know exactly the best solution for that not eradication, but removal.
Reduction.
But there are, just bringing down the population. But there are, you might consider talking to some of the people that have been involved in the project at Mill Pond. Dr. Steven Souza, I believe, is the proper name. I might not have that, but he's who's been advising the committee at Mill Pond about that. That help? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
So we're going to do a culling of the carp.
Yes. Okay. Is there any other additional public comment? Okay. Joe, are you sure? Okay. All right. We now move to suggested resolutions.
I'll entertain a motion resolved that the reading of the minutes for the public session of July 11th, 2019 be dispensed with, and that those minutes be accepted as filed by the village administrator, and the actions taken at that meeting be and hereby are ratified and approved.
So moved.
For a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolved that the claims for the warrants dated July 23rd, 2019, totaling $313.73, warrant number 5, general fund payables, $515,333.48, warrant number 4, general fund, $347,754.15, warrant number 2, capital reserve fund, and $300, warrant number 4, trust fund, and the village payrolls for the period ended July 18, 2019 be audited and approved.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, reviewing bills. Under general disbursements, Absolute Shine Auto Spa, $1,200. That's the annual cleaning and details of the chief vehicles for the fire department. Alpine Software Corporation, $13,160.42. That's the annual support and upgrade contract for the fire department computers, including their paging gateway. Business card services, $1,326.40. That's the credit card purchases for the month. $1,079.10 of it was for United Rentals for the shuttle vehicle used at the helipad. Corwitz Auto Body Inc., $1,900. Those are towing expenses. Fort Orange Press Incorporated, $1,307. That's the printing of ballots for the 2019 village election. Gemplers, $1,375.47. That's 45 20-gallon watering bags for trees. Granger, $1,620.67. That's smoke candles and rubber gloves for the fire department, and 2 2-horsepower belt drive motors for the building maintenance department, plus various other supplies for multiple departments. Jesco Incorporated, $30,559.84. That's to replace the loader linkage, bucket, pins and bushings for a backhoe and its swing frame, and to rebuild the wear plates, shims, and pads on the backhoe.
Can you say it again quickly?
Who approved it? McKesson Medical Surgical Government Solutions, $3,203.65. Medical supplies for the ambulance. $1,101.95 from Mutt Mitt. That's supplies for the Mutt Mitt dispensers throughout the village. Norsec & Son, $4,237. Solid waste disposal. New York State Employees Health Insurance, $369,520.32. That's the August health insurance premium. Optimum, $1,126.95. Cable and internet for village departments. PC Richard & Sons, $1,049.91. 3 dehumidifiers for the building maintenance department. PSEG Long Island Collection Services, $8,535.40. Utilities for the village departments. Rapid Recovery Towing Services, $2,350. That's towing expenses. Revco Electrical Supply, $1,012.22. Roof fans, electrical materials for Cooper's Pavilion, and various electrical supplies throughout the village. South Fork Asphalt, $35,657.50. That's Lee Avenue drainage improvements. Sprague Operating, that's $6,079.50. 87 octane for the fleet. Gasoline. Stryker Sales Corp., $2,440. Parts and repairs for the Life Pad 15 for the cardiac monitor for the ambulance. Vincent Toomey, $9,854.31. Outside labor council expenses. W&G Services, $3,134.17. Replace blower motor at the police department, a zone valve HVAC replacement at PD, and a service call. Moving on to capital disbursements. Hirsch & Company, $47,405. That's plumbing for the ambulance capital project. Morton Buildings, Inc., $248,384.15. That's the general contractor for the ambulance project. Rollins Electrical, $51,965. That's electrical work being done at the ambulance capital project. If there aren't any questions, all in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Entertain a resolution resolved that the Board of Trustees approves the following purchases from capital reserve, subject to permissive referendum. Maltese cross sign for fire department for fire facility from fire facility capital reserve, $3,895. If you look under resolutions, the purchase orders for each of these are listed right after the warrant. Chairs for safety dispatchers from Office Equipment Capital Reserve, $5,242. And 800 MHZ portable radios for the police department from Major Equipment Capital Reserve, $7,000. Cameras for the cell block at police station from Major Equipment Reserve, $6,718.66. Training equipment for the fire department indoor training facility from Fire Equipment Capital Reserve, $8,523.60. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so is there any questions on any of these? These are purchase orders that have been submitted by the various departments, the fire department, the police department, and the police department, for which the trustee has approved the purchase order. However, it's a capital reserve purchase, so it would be subject to permissive referendum and approval of this board. If there are no questions, Trustee Yastrzemski.
Aye.
Trustee Allen.
Aye.
Mayor Warren.
Aye.
Trustee Parrish.
Aye.
Trustee Polaro.
Aye.
So moved. Adopted. Entertain a motion.
And I want to say, just quickly, Russ, I want to thank you for the 3 new members. This wasn't a process we used to do in the past, so this is an extremely more transparent process of these purchase orders, and I want to thank you because you're the one who kind of pointed that out and recommended bringing it, it being done this way. So I do want to thank you for that.
All right. Thank you, Russell.
Will entertain a motion, whereas the Village Board has adopted a capital project, the Moses Lane Park. Whereas the village has reviewed the proposed action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act through the preparation of an environmental assessment form, parts 1, 2, and 3. And whereas the Village Board has a planned design inclusive of playing courts and trails. And whereas no potential significant adverse impacts were identified, be it resolved that the Southampton Village Board hereby adopts a negative declaration for the application for grant funding and implementation of the proposed improvements at Moses Lane Park.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
So, go ahead on a question.
Well, we're obviously, we're just agreeing to a negative declaration here. But are we also committing to, because we're still kind of up in the air what we're doing there. So when it says based on grant funding for implementation of proposed improvements, are we specific on that, or are we still kind of?
No, you're not
committing to that.
Committing to the funding. As you know,
Just a negative deck.
you authorize the preparation of detailed engineering plans, because you had general concept plans, but you didn't have those, and you would have to go to bid on those. And so if you get to a point where you're either the funding or the cost is excessive, you're not obligated or committed because of this resolution.
Thank you.
So what this is able to do, we have a July 26th deadline to submit this grant. And part of the submission of the grant is that we have to do the SECRA on the project. So it doesn't mean that as long as it's not something majorly changed, you go from 3 tennis courts to 15, or parking from what's estimated larger. You could always go smaller because it has less impact. Then you're essentially giving it a negative declaration, and therefore we have a full application to submit to the state for this funding.
Can you just say for the record, I'm sorry, that a negative declaration is a good thing, even though the word negative kind of implies a negative thing, but a negative deck is actually a good thing for this?
That is correct. In other words, we're not declaring that it's a type 1 or a type 2 action or it has any major impact. Right.
Russell, based on what you said, the grant funding is tied to the plan that we saw the last go-around or not?
Yes.
Because I'm a little confused. Okay.
Yes, it's based on that
It's
plan.
based on that, but it doesn't necessarily, you do not lose the funding if you do not, I mean, if the
make some
plan is-
changes to it?
If you make some changes to it that are not substantially greater than what you put,
Okay, what about if they're less than what we put?
that won't affect it. You just, the project wouldn't be as large, you wouldn't get as much funding.
So are we going to readdress the plan once it's submitted?
I would think when we put together bid specs that, prior to us going out to bid on the specs, that this board would readdress.
Any input that we have subsequently received since can be used?
Yes, yes.
So the public will have another chance to come and comment
Yes.
on the plan, and we were awaiting information on the plan, so we can go ahead with the grant funding since we have a deadline, but we still have to your point,
We're not committing to the actual project.
Actual plan.
And
But
worst
you've
case
only
scenario-
adopted
And worst case scenario, let's say, again, let's say ultimately this board doesn't want to go with the existing thing, what we lose is the grant. Is that what our worst case
You
scenario is?
could lose the grant.
Okay.
And keep in mind that this, when I say this board, it was done as a prior administration. It created a capital project, but only for the design phase. So you have not adopted a capital project for the implementation or the build-out. So
this is
we've
the-
only committed $52,000 basically for the design.
Correct. Okay. All right, so this is just to get in the grant.
Correct. Okay, so no further questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Entertain a motion resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby ratifies a rate of $12 for Theodore Raffle III, beach attendant, when assigned as a shuttle driver effective June 29th, 2019. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Entertain a motion resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves Stephen Rodriguez as a probationary member of Hook and Ladder Company Number 1 effective July 23rd, 2019.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Entertain a motion resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the hiring of Jason Dublin as a part-time EMT paramedic at a rate of $25 effective July 24th, 2019.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Entertain a motion resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the hiring of Patrick Gugliotta as a part-time EMT critical care at a rate of $25 effective July 24th, 2019.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can I just explain to that again, to just clarify, just when we're hiring these EMT, these are part of our group of EMTs. So this person isn't really being hired in addition to our existing EMT crew at this rate per hour. We're just bringing them into our roster, so when they get called in, that's what they're being paid. So everybody knows.
Essentially, what happens is we have 2 full-time EMTs, and we, if I'm not mistaken, we have, is it 2 at all times?
Correct.
So we have 2 on call at all times. So adding more part-timers doesn't necessarily add more expense. It actually spreads it out because we have trouble getting people, to cover all of it. So then oftentimes we have to have our full-timers come in at overtime.
Correct.
So actually hiring more part-timers reduces the amount of overtime that we give our full-timers. Also gives them the proper time off as well, because it's, it becomes stressful if they're on duty, 50, 60 hours a week.
And these are a pool of people that basically work all in neighboring departments all around the East End, and they just basically go from one department to the next, filling their week.
The only comment I'll make is we approved those 2 positions originally because we had a problem with holidays. Remember that?
Correct, holiday
Okay.
and overtime, correct.
So the reason why we have those 2 full-time positions is we shouldn't have had a problem with pulling people in for overtime. They were supposed to solve that problem. So now I'm wondering, we created 2 full-time positions, and the reason why we did that is because we had a problem on holidays, and we couldn't bring people in.
Couldn't get the part-timers to come.
Exactly.
You have the full-timers on holidays, but you still have the overtime issue.
Right, so essentially what was happening is that, from what I understand is that we brought full-timers in because we were having trouble covering all of the shifts.
Right.
So essentially, we now have full-timers, but obviously full-timers only work 80 hours a week, between the 2 of them, and you need the rest of those hours filled in with a pool of part-timers. So that's essentially what's happening. But if you don't have enough part-timers, you have to bring your full-timers in on overtime.
The problem you're referring to is that we had a civil service issue because of those full-timers that went over, or anybody for that matter, goes over a certain amount of hours per week, then you have a civil service issue. So that's why it was important to keep their hours out and bring in bodies to spread the hours out. So they don't, per hours per week, go over the allotted number before they get civil service issues.
I have to pull my notes out because I don't remember that. I remember something different, but I could not be remembering. So that's...
I could be not remembering either, but it sounded good, didn't it?
Okay, it did. Yeah.
Okay, so now to discussion items. Russell, I'll let you take it from here.
Okay, so late last fall, late November, early December, we had twice had discussion items with the board with regards to parking on Jagger Lane. One of the things that was brought to the attention of the board was the request of one of the store owners to have a 30-minute parking or kind of have different types of parking. Board, after having discussion, came to realize that two things were happening on Jagger Lane. Number one, there's no signage, and there were some complaints about people who were parking there all day, people who work maybe in Stop and Shop or work in some of the businesses there that would park their car there all day because there's no signage and no enforcement. And so the retail shop owners who were looking for the turnover were not getting the turnover of vehicles. And one of the reasons we didn't have signage there is because it's, as I can tell, the only street in town in which we had two sets of parking regulations, one from May 1st to September 30th. The regulation is limited to 1 hour parking, and it's 2 hour parking from October 1st through April 30th. So in reviewing the notes, it came to pretty much a consensus of some of the business owners. I received a couple of phone calls and some emails asking if the village board had done anything since the fall. I stopped down actually at the Southampton soap shop and met with a couple of the business owners. They'd be happy with any change, meaning, making it a permanency of either 1 hour or 2 hours. Some of the discussion items I heard from the prior board that to be consistent with kind of the neighboring areas, Main Street and other streets, that 2 hours would probably be the more likely recommended. So if the board would be interested, we could pass a resolution to schedule a public hearing to change the parking regulations on Jagger Lane. I don't know if Wayne has anything to add to that.
Well, based on what was stated, and my recollection was the discussion was about the 30-minute limitations, and in the end, the board identified this discrepancy or difference between the 1 hour and the 2 hour. And Gary's here, and all he was ever looking for was direction, which signs does he make and put up, and whether he needs to go in there every spring and fall and go and change signs. So I took the liberty based on what the board's direction before, and I think I shot around a proposal with emails, and I saw some board members in favor of that. So what you have in your package is a proposed local law to schedule a public hearing for your August 20th meeting, which would basically make it a 2 hour parking limitation between the hours 9 and 6, except Sunday.
Can I just say one little caveat to that? Because during that discussion, if I recall, the reason we didn't do 30-minute or didn't want that because you have people going to Stop and Shop and they're going to sometimes require more than that. But somebody did bring up, which could be, I don't think it has to be part of the resolution, but it can be also, or I don't know if it does. In some areas in the village, we put up 15-minute parking. So that came up as a discussion, okay, making it 2 hour parking, but if somebody really wanted some short-term parking, we could have grabbed 1 or 2 spots for 15-minute parking. I don't know if that needs to be thrown in with this now, or is that something we do after the fact?
Well, I think you can certainly do that. The question is where do you want to do it? And I think that was not something, there wasn't a consensus, and I don't know if anybody figured out where you would put those 15-minute spots.
I remember the question. I remember there was no answer.
There was.
We did on Hampton Road. Hampton Road has 2.
Hampton Road?
One on the east end and one on the
and we
west
have
end.
in front of Herrick's.
And
in front of Sean's
Katina's,
place and
and
Katina's.
Sean's place.
Katina's are the last ones we added because he
It's
was
like in
asking.
between places where you can come on in, grab some things and go. And as
Did it in
far
front
as-
of Tate's Cookies, too.
Tate's Cookies, that was actually, that was right, that was the last one we just did. So, again, that could be part of the public hearing process, everybody has recommendations. You would obviously pick somewhere along the southern side of it, in front of the dry cleaners or the deli, those delis there or whatever.
South Thrifty Drug,
Or
maybe.
South Thrifty right there. And so,
Yeah.
You have
I mean, you're
quite a
also
few
close,
stores
they're,
that are in
they're also
Yeah.
close there, you know,
Yeah.
I don't really think it would clearly have to be the south side.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't think it'd be too much of an issue because they're all pretty close there, but.
I think it makes sense.
But that did come up, you know.
You have 4 stores right there that are basically in and out.
In and out,
Yeah.
yep.
So-
But the 2-hour makes sense to be consistent to your point, Andrew, earlier.
That was my point.
I saw it in the email from Andrew.
I said it first.
That was true.
I said it.
Oh, you said it first.
I can't even
All
lose
right.
it. I said it last year.
So we're going to just,
So
So the proposal you have doesn't include the spaces for the 15-minute.
yeah.
You can either give me direction, I can draft that so that it's in there, so you can have it for your public hearing.
is that necessary to have that for this public hearing, or should we go
Well,
ahead
I
with
think-
2 hour?
I think what Rich is saying is that it might be good to at least, if you put it in there,
put it in there,
then
the
you
public
have the
can-
public at least an opportunity to be heard on it. I mean, not that you couldn't express that at the public hearing, but if it's not in there, some people may not care and not come and attend, but if it was in there, then maybe they would attend. So we can add it,
Add it and-
I just need to know 2 spaces in front of, because we have to
So you
put
have to have a number
specific
of spaces. You have
location.
to have a
We need
specific
to
number.
talk to the people. We can't just
Yeah.
lift 15 minutes and
Yeah.
put it down without getting a sense of what that
The
area.
other approach, just
When
do
we had
this
those
and
15
then
I mean, is there enough
have a
time
continuation
between...
of discussion.
Yeah. 'cause
So
when
is
we
there
did the
enough
other
time, if
15
we hold this resolution to call the public hearing, there's enough time between the August 8th meeting and the August 20th meeting?
No, there's never enough time.
Between two
You
meetings.
need 10 days' notice, and that's what your problem is with your meeting dates, is you need 10 days' notice after publication in the paper.
Right.
But when we added those previous 15-minute spots, were they actual public hearings, or we just?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we did it for every single person.
Yeah, 2 hour, let's do the 2 hour wait.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that's fine.
I think you can use this as an opportunity and
Okay.
continue to
Yeah,
discuss,
just get
and then
going.
maybe
Revisit
find a
after, yeah.
specific location, and that way there's at
Yeah,
least a...
because I don't want to prevent this from going forward.
No other questions? Entertain a resolution to schedule a public hearing on a local law amending Chapter 11043, Schedule L, stopping, standing, and parking restrictions of the Vehicles and Traffic Code to modify the time restrictions on Jagger Lane.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
On Tuesday, August 20th.
Okay, very good. So we are moving forward to wrapping up tonight's meeting. We now have comments from board members. So we will start with Trustee Yastrzemski.
Just first off, I want to thank everybody. It's always nice to see a packed room of people, although it's not indicative of it right now, but it was. And that's a healthy thing to see people in our village, residents take an active role in how we operate up here. So I thank everybody for showing up for that. I also want to commend our K-9, Officer James Moore, and Topper, because it was one of the first actual uses of our K-9 to assist in a search of assisting Southampton Town Police in catching and detaining a person who was trying to escape, run away from the town police. So that was one of the first good uses of our village asset in helping our neighboring departments. And that's all I got.
Okay, thank you very much, Trustee Yastrzemski. Trustee Allen.
Good meeting tonight, good turnout. I think we have a lot of good things we can act on in the near term. And I like the enthusiasm of everybody in the audience and all the people who are partners with us, from the town trustees to the county level and a lot of our non-for-profit water body organizations. since the first legislation that was put forward by this administration was the balloon legislation, I just wanted to follow up and see if we've had a way to get the word out. I had a very good discussion with Justice Wilson, and she was not aware of it because until she read the paper. And I just think we need to put together a little better process that we reach out and touch everybody in a good way. So the village, the police department, the justice court, and then
Just reach out and touch them.
okay.
In a good way.
In a good way. And then I know, Mayor Warren, you had said you were going to reach out and talk to the retailers to have them stop selling balloons as well as online stores. I didn't know if you had that opportunity. I had talked to all the retailers in advance to tell them this was coming, but I didn't know if you had a chance to double back and have that discussion with them.
I did reach out to Town Trustee Ann Welker just about gathering some data about balloons that have been found on the beaches and also offshore. This way we can go back to both the brick and mortar stores as well as some of the online retailers with some data, and if we were to move with a more intense law that would ban either the sale or other different types of work there, we can then quantify to what extent that would help in the future. So perhaps we can then say, thanks to this law, that we found 20% less balloons in our ocean. So Trustee Welker will be getting back to us hopefully soon with some of that data.
Okay.
So I think that'd be helpful.
Data. And the only other thing is everybody always looks at bad news, but good news. A fellow found a handbag with a lot of money in it, pictures, and things that are very difficult to replace, like credit cards and driver's licenses. And he actually found the owner and returned it, and there must have been $800 or more in the purse. So the world is a good place after all, and there are a lot of good people in the village. So
yes, there is.
That's it.
All right. Thank you, Trustee Allen. Now we have Trustee Parrish.
God bless us, everyone.
So we are 3 weeks in, Mayor and Trustees Polaro and Parrish, so it's been educational. Feeling ourselves around the village and getting to know people, and especially for me, I got to spend some time with the department at the park, highway department, central garage, and just getting to know some of the personnel more in the village hall. It's been good. I've been learning a little bit more about my board members and looking forward to learning more and working together. I do want to touch base on two things. Steve Phillips and the Parks Department were fantastic enough about 2 weeks ago to get some water to the dog park. So there were a lot of happy dogs, a lot of happy dog owners, and I wonder who was having a water fight, the dogs or the dog owners, with all the fun water that they got. Also, I spoke to Paul Murphy today, and I want to give him a shout out to jumping right away on the storm that came down. Some trees came down. They were out clearing the trees immediately and jumping on some of the clogged drains. And I know that one of those in particular was around where I lived, and so I want to thank them. And it's been really good to get to know those gentlemen and their crew and to see the work that they're doing. And that was all I have to say. And yes, it was a great turnout tonight, and it's nice to have people engaged. So good job to the people who brought up the presentations. So thank you.
Thank you to everybody, and Trustee Parrish, thank you for working within our Parks Department to get the water back in the dog park. That was, I know there's a lot of people that are very happy about that, so thank you again.
Especially the dogs who can't
Yes.
say anything.
Especially the dogs. Okay, moving forward, Trustee Polaro.
Thank you. Yes, I concur with Mark that it's been 3 weeks of drinking from the fire hose and absolutely enjoying it 100%. I want to thank everyone who came out this evening, especially the young members of our community to share their views and make their voices heard. Even though they're not of voting age, Jesse, you got to wait a couple of more terms, but
8 years.
You can prep them. You
He's
can
already
prep
got them in
so.
his database.
That's right.
So thank you all.
Okay, and comments here. So a few things I wanted to point out. We had discussed a last trustee meeting about Ocean Rescue. We're excited about that. We are now in the process of just getting the numbers over to our chief of police so that they can have a practice tone out. So thank you again, Trustee Parrish, for your help with that. We're very excited on that front. And on that note, there is an international ocean film tour on July 29th at the Southampton Arts Center in honor of the Ocean Rescue and in collaboration with them. So that's another activity to go check out. A few other quick things. Just this weekend, wanted to point out I received some phone calls about some parking issues at Old Town Beach, and we had learned that a homeowner had purchased beach parking stickers for workers. We then reached out to the homeowner, and these cars were then moved. So we wanted to thank that homeowner for doing that. But we also want to think about how we can avoid this going forward, because ultimately we don't want our beach parking to be used as worker parking or just general overnight parking or any substitute parking for residents. So just something to think about on this board, how we could avoid that going forward. We want people to be able to buy beach passes, but maybe not in this manner. So just something to think about. Very excited about the Lake Agawam Conservancy. So I know I announced that earlier, so that's very important. I also reached out to the DEC. I'm hoping to have a phone call with them. One thing I wanted to discuss is that, as we talked about this meeting, that New York state law will prohibit us from banning pesticides and herbicides. And we just want to get some dialogue going with the DEC because I'd love for Southampton Village to be the first village in New York to be able to do that. And so we want to figure out how we can collaborate with them, and because I think we're on the, we're doing the right thing here. I think that they would want to work with us, and so maybe we could help push that along, not just on the village level, but even on the state level. And so raising awareness with the DEC is just a nice first step in the right direction. And then additionally, just to bring up, we had spoke about either surf school or surf lessons. We're continuing to speak with two groups who are seeking licenses. And, Russell and Wayne, we'd love to, as we discussed, we want to get that done on July 31st or earlier. So we want to push that along, make our announcements to the community that we can have licensed surf lessons done legally. And then we also want to simultaneously step up our enforcement for those who are not applying for licenses and doing it without kind of village oversight. So that would be important, because we have two groups, one group that's doing it correctly and another group that is not. So we want to make sure we reward those who are following the law and doing the right thing. So,
just ask very quickly, are the discussions going along with what came up here as far as how they're regulated, the fee, revenue sharing? Is this all part of what's going forward, or how is it going forward?
I think it's probably better, since some of this would be considered contract negotiation, that's probably right. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll do that executive session, but just want to get the word out that we're still working on it. We want to get this done because it'd be nothing better to have surf lessons done and done the right way. So, and again, wanted to thank our board. Great job to everybody here. Love to see the turnout. To me and to us, I believe there's nothing better than to see a well-attended meeting, our community getting involved, aware. This is exactly what we signed up for and why we do it. So love to see it tonight. So very excited. And so we don't have to do a second public comment since we've already done that. So with that said, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn to executive session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.